Okay, call to order. This meeting is a public session of the Council Rock Board of School Directors. This meeting is being recorded by the Council Rock School District and may be recorded by members of the audience. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Brooks?
Here.
Mr. Bilek?
Here.
Dr. Foster?
Here.
Mr. Grupp?
Present.
Mrs. McKessie?
Here.
Mrs. Sexton?
Present.
Mrs. Thomas?
Here.
Mr. Abramson?
Here.
And Mr. Block is away.
Yes, Mr. Block is away on business. Thank you. Mr. Klein, Student Advisory Board.
Mr. Funk, welcome. Thank you very much. Welcome back to a new school year.
Thank you. Good to be
We're
here.
anxious to meet your new members of the Student Advisory Board.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the School Board of Directors, Central Administrators, Mr. Klein. It is my pleasure to introduce the 2014-2015 Student Advisory Board from Council Rock High School South. Our new 9th grade representative is Hannah Devlin. Our 10th grade, give a little wave there. There you go. Our 10th grade representative is Felicia Wilkoff. Our 11th grade representative is Jack Wheatley. Our MBIT representative is Victoria Manasian. And finally, our 12th grade rep is Jared Rovner. Yeah. And I would like to thank the students in advance for their willingness to deliver periodic updates before the School Board of Directors on the many positive things happening at Council Rock High School South. With that, take it away, Hannah, or whoever wants to start. I'm sorry.
Change of plan.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Hannah Devlin, and I'm the 9th grade representative for the Student Advisory Board on the behalf of Council Rock South. A very successful back-to-school night on September 17th got started with a tour that National Honor Society students gave parents from 6:30 to 7 p.m. Then, for the first time, a video featuring a welcome message from Mr. Funk was shown to parents in the homerooms instead of the traditional announcement over the loudspeaker. This year, over 1,300 parents attended, about 300 more than last year and the highest total in 3 years. It was a huge turnout in the start to what's going to be a great year. Many of our fall sports teams are nearing the end of their seasons, with roughly 2 weeks left. Playoffs and postseason tournaments are already underway in some sports. Women's volleyball has a Dig Pink event during their October 9th game at South. This match against North is a fundraiser for breast cancer research. Please come out and support this great cause if you can. League golf championships were held Monday, and 3 South players qualified to the District 1 tournament. In 10th grade, Lucas Clark and Griffin Smith, and in 12th grade, Mike Barachevsky. The Women's Suburban 1 tennis tournament was held last week, and a 9th grader from South, Alyssa Skolsky, won the overall tournament, in addition to advancing to the district tournament. Kelsey Sattler, a 12th grader, also advanced to the district tournament. PSAT registration is taking place now through October 15th in the Counseling Center. The cost is $25 cash or a check made out to the Guidance Testing Fund. The test date is October 18th at 7:45 a.m. Thank you for your attention and good luck to everyone taking PSATs.
Hello, my name is Victoria Manasian and I'm a junior at Council Rock High School South. I'm also a student at the Health Science Program at Middlebucks Institute of Technology. On June 19, 2014, Mr. Christopher Tolley, MBIT Multimedia Technology Instructor, was presented the 2014 Outstanding Career and Technical Teacher Award sponsored by the Pennsylvania Association for Career and Technical Education. Mr. Tolley is truly deserving of this award, and we are thrilled for his achievements. It was a very exciting time on September 22nd for the students in the construction group. The student-built house, primarily constructed by students in 5 different programs, has moved to its permanent location. More information about the student-built house is available at www.mbit.org. MBIT's annual open house is scheduled for Wednesday, January 7th from 7 to 9 p.m. A snow date has been scheduled for Wednesday, January 14th. All are invited. to come and explore MBIT's 22 career and technical programs, as well as learn about our newest programs, sports therapy, and exercise management. As being involved in the health science program, we are members of a student organization called HOSA. HOSA is a program for future health professionals and anyone who wants to be involved in health. As which of I've been elected the 2014-2015 HOSA president. All groups focus on community service, leadership, and skills preparation for the future. I look forward to reporting to you all at the December board meeting. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, everyone, and I hope you all had a great summer. My name is Felicia Wilkov, and I'm the 10th grade representative from Council Rock High School South. The class of 2017 has planned a thrilling night of rides and frights at Six Flags Fright Fest. The trip is on Saturday, October 18th, and is open to all Council Rock South sophomores. The cost is $50 per person, which includes park admission and bus transportation. The trip sounds like a blast and is an exciting event for the class of 2017. Also, Council Rock High School South has been accepted into the ARIS program. ARIS stands for Amateur Radio on the International Space Station. The ARIS program organizes scheduled contacts through amateur radio. Classrooms and communities have the chance to communicate with astronauts and cosmonauts aboard the International Space Station. Instead of our school spending thousands of dollars on the equipment to contact the International Space Station, an ARIS member from NASA donated the equipment to our school. This allows us to establish a permanent school station, and students will be able to communicate with the International Space Station in places all around the world. Council Rock South is in the process of installing and testing the equipment. This upcoming week, we are locking into a beacon that the International Space Station sends out as a test to make sure we can contact them. Our school is also working with the Warminster Amateur Radio Club to help with tests and also to help license both staff and students. I look forward to reporting to you at future board meetings. Thank you for your time and have a good night.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jack Wheatley, and I am very excited to be the now 11th grade representative for Council Rock South Student Advisory Board. And it's great to see all you smiling faces again. First, let's start with the band. Along with supporting our football team at their games every Friday night, the Sierra South Marching Band competed in a U.S. Bands Music Festival on Saturday, September 27th at Central Bucks South High School and won numerous awards such as Best Band Captain, Best Color Guard, and Best Percussion. They will also be hosting their own marching band competition on Saturday, October 11th at CR North. In other news, the interim date is currently set for tomorrow, Friday, October 3rd. Parents can check their child's progress on the Home Access Center. The official end of the first marking period is scheduled for Thursday, November 6th, and report cards will be handed out to students on Thursday, November 20th during homeroom. The class of 2016 is currently getting ready for South's annual Winter Ball on Saturday, November 22nd. The dance is open to all students, and like always, the attire will be semi-formal. The theme for the dance this year is country, and South will be sure to lasso in all the fun, and it should be a real rodeo of a time. Thank you for your time, and have a great night.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jarrett Rovner, and I'm happy as anything to be back as the senior representative for CR South. We've had a lot going on in the South community since the school year started, and I just wanted to say thank you to all those who helped make this transition into the new year as smooth and as peaceful as possible. With this said, there are a lot of exciting activities going on at school right now, so let me introduce some of the events. First up is Fall Festival. On Saturday, October 18th, South is holding its annual Fall Festival from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. in front of the school. Clubs from all corners of the school come to set up tables and attractions to raise money and awareness for their organizations. It's a community event with things to do for people of all ages, so there's no reason not to stop by. One can find everything there, from Chick-fil-A sandwiches to our live senior auction to smashing a car with a hammer. It's a great community day. Everybody should decide to stop by. Next up is Spirit Week. The week of Blue White Gold Night at South has always been filled with fun themed days. From Monday, October 27th to Friday, October 31st, it will be Spirit Week at South. The theme days usually vary from year to year, and are still being discussed by our SEB. But I'm told it will definitely be a return of everybody's favorite day, Pajama Day. The week peaks on Thursday, which is Blue White Gold Night. Speaking of which, eagerly awaited by all, Thursday, October 30th is our annual Blue White Gold Night, better known as to the underclassmen as Judgment Day. After school, the classes will duel in events like Westchester Volleyball, the basketball relay, and most anticipated of all, the chicken sling. Mr. Raddick won't tolerate a senior loss, and neither will we. And finally, I know it's only the beginning of fall, but next week is the first collection of dues for our senior class trip to Disney World. From Monday, October 6th to Wednesday, October 8th, the Senior Class Student Council will be collecting the first payment at all lunches. The trip this year is scheduled from April 14th to April 18th. I'm already prepping my Disney gear in anticipation for an unforgettable trip. Thank you all for listening, and have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you. Nicely done.
Jared?
Yeah?
Jared, I've asked for 10 years, why do we buy rubber chickens? You are the first person who has said anything that leads me to understand why we purchase it.
They have an important place on the budget, I can assure you that.
It's a line item. Chickens, rubber.
Mr. Funk is always a wonderful representation of the Council Rock South student community. Ladies and gentlemen, you did a great job. We look forward to seeing you for the rest of the school year.
Thank you.
Thank you
Enjoy the
very
rest
much.
of your night.
Thank you. It's so good to have students back.
Well, we can do one more thing with students then. Mr. Funk, while you're here, shall we honor your National Merit Scholars? Absolutely. Okay.
This evening, it is a pleasure to award certificates of commendation to Council Rock High School South's 2014-2015 National Merit Scholars. As many of you know, the National Merit Program recognizes students who have achieved a high selection index score on the preliminary SATs, otherwise known as the PSATs. The scores of the following students place them in the top 50,000 of over 1.5 million test takers nationwide. A letter from the Scholarship Committee stated the following: "We offer you our best wishes with the hope that being named a commended student in the National Merit Program will broaden your horizons and encourage you to develop your potential to the absolute fullest." So at this time, with the help of Superintendent Mr. Mark Klein, it is absolutely my pleasure to introduce our National Merit Scholars, and I'll do so in alphabetical order and ask them to please come up to receive their certificate. First up, Nathaniel Albuck. It's all about the photo op. David A. Gregorian. Thomas W. Heineman. Tanya Kumar. Not present there. Shane Malley. That's all noise. Oh, okay. Oh, there you go. That's a first. I like that. We may have to incorporate that. Melissa Nicholas. Jennifer Park.
Melissa.
Madison A. Peshin. Christine M. Roberts. Alexander F. Rose. And finally, Mitchell D. Rosen. Ladies and gentlemen, one final round of applause for Council Rock High School South's best and brightest. Yeah, you can get it, Bush.
And you guys all look nice. Somebody gave a dress code. It's very nice.
Okay, folks.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. Okay, Mr. Klein, you have a superintendent's report?
Just one announcement. Mrs. Thomas, thank you. Council Rock, we typically called our notification system the one that had the melodic voice of Mr. Frederickson in the morning telling you that there was no school. This year, the system that we're using to notify you about school-related issues is called EduLink. We've already started using EduLink. It's coming through as school-based announcements from North and South and various elementary schools. But to get ready for the winter and to make sure that the emergency notification system is properly working, we are going to test the entire EduLink notification system. So on Wednesday, October 8th, 2014, beginning at 6 o'clock p.m., we will launch to all phones in our system, cell phone and regular phones, a test to make sure that all of the phones that you expect to get notified when we make an emergency notification will be notified. We'll post a notice. I think if it's not up now, it will be up tomorrow on our website that'll give you information in case you don't get a phone call at 6. Besides that, just expect a 6 o'clock notification that's a test for the EduLink system. A staff test for all of the staff in Council Rock will begin at 5 o'clock p.m. Thank you, Mrs. Thomas.
Thank you. Moving on to public comment. Public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board. We would ask that you limit your comments to no longer than 3 minutes. Please consider the fact that there may be young children in the audience or watching this broadcast on CRTV. It is our goal to maintain a respectful environment so that members of our community have an equal opportunity to address the board without interruption. While the board welcomes your ideas and will consider them in deliberating an issue, we may not respond to your comments or questions. I only had one person sign up, so I'm going to start with Tara Wigington. Please. Thank you.
Good evening, Tara Wigington of Ivyland, Voice for the Achieve program, currently located at the LSAC building. I have passed around an article that was written just last week by a New Hope Solebury teacher. That teacher happens to be the spouse of one of the supervisors of Campus Close, a local business that has welcomed the Achieve students as volunteers for the past year. I am sharing this article because of all the publicity the Achieve program has received. Channel 6 News, the Courier Times. This article captures what I believe to be the true essence of what the Achieve program stands for and how it has developed into such a successful transition program. So if you haven't read it, I ask that you please take the time that will shed some light on the accomplishments and goals of the program. What is most encouraging about this article is where it's getting exposure. It was featured in Local Living magazine. Local Living magazine is a Central Bucks area monthly periodical. I know this because I see it every week when I'm at the YMCA in Doylestown where my son participates in the Abilities Exercise Program. When the new monthly issue comes out, several copies are put on display throughout the Y for members to read. It's a fabulous local magazine. What's ironic, though, for those of you who are not aware, the Y is across the street from CB West High School. And the primary population of the Y is Central Bucks families. Now, if I'm a parent of a special needs student in any one of the Central Bucks district high schools, you can be sure after reading this article, I'm thinking I might be in the wrong district. My point is, just as the article states, the supervisor, Alyssa Martin, realized there was an ever-increasing population of students with special needs and had a vision. And with Dr. Lambert's blessing, the program was delivered. The district went one step further and hired a teacher with a strong business background. This teacher then transferred his skills from sports management in the NFL to seek out placements that were win-win situations for both students and businesses. Most importantly, the article emphasizes that part of the equation is that the operations are designed to mimic an office setting as much as possible. The students have their own desk and work-related materials, which promotes a sense of identity, independence, and a sense of place for each individual working and learning in the Achieve program complex. Complex, not school. I am here tonight to respectfully ask the board and administration that when taking into consideration the new location, please replicate the current location, that being an office setting. The parents are asking that you review the prior suggestions that have made so far, particularly the location proposed by Dr. Lambert and Mr. Grupp, this Chancellor Building, which is accessible to Newtown's thriving community and SEPTA. Parents are also asking for clarification as to what is currently being considered. Thank you very much.
Anyone else, please approach the mic, state your name and your town. And if others would like to speak, you're welcome to line up along the wall if you're interested. Thank you.
Okay. Today, you have 26 modulars used for students, 18 at the elementary level. I support removing modulars. If the Schrader report that we've all been looking at is accurate, and which I know is a question for some, if it's accurate, and you add in the extra classroom that's been created at Sol Feinstein since, there's 8 more general ed classes today in the district at the elementary level than there are in the report. You need to redistrict. You also need to then go find 8 more general ed classrooms that the principals and the administration and Schrader didn't find when they went and did that report and that analysis. Closing Wrightstown is going to make it more difficult because even when you redistrict, you're taking 9 classrooms offline at a time when you actually need those classrooms. So not only do you have to go find 8 classrooms that Schrader didn't identify, you need to go find 8 or 9 more. That's 16 to 17 classrooms you're going to need to find if you would like to now, soon, take off all modulars. I know you can squeeze more students into existing spaces. You've done it before. Is it good, though? Peak capacity at the smallest bedroom in my house is a preteen and 2 toddlers. They fit, but it wasn't pretty, and I don't ever want to do it again. Ms. Sexton may be correct that you could fit 6 classrooms in a pod at Rolling Hills, but would each classroom be the minimum 660 square feet that Schrader suggests you need? I'm not so sure. If you create 5th and 6th grade centers, you will need on average 10 fewer sections than you have with a K-6 configuration. Much easier to remove all the modulars soon. You may even have enough space to remove children from atypical spaces such as storage areas. Class size efficiency is important. Schrader estimated capacity at 90%, not only because it's an educational planning standard, but that because in sending areas we don't birth and migrate in perfect multiples of 25, 26, 28, and 30 students. And even if you redistrict every year, it's not going to match up. Right now, as of June 2014, your average class size was 23.6. If you close Wrightstown now, it's going to go up maybe 23.7. It's about the same. It doesn't improve much because you're still spreading K-6 across 9 schools. If you create 5th and 6th grade centers, you're now spreading K-4 across 7 and 5 to 6 only across 3. Your average class size will be more optimized, closer to 25 students per class at the elementary level. Cost is really important too. I've watched past meetings online and I see things being said like, We have a responsibility to run this district as efficiently as we can. We need to be good stewards of taxpayer money. We need cost efficiencies to help pay for aging buildings, and we need to have sustainability even with the looming pension crisis. Well, you saved some money closing Wrightstown. Now, if you somehow overcame the space issues it created by taking classrooms offline instead of modulars, you'll still save significantly more creating 5th and 6th grade centers. On average, $1.4 million per year could be used for other district needs, including capital needs. This is without spending millions to expand other schools or to repurpose schools or to maintain an empty elementary school that you don't want to get rid of. If you want to remove modulars, optimize class sizes, be more efficient, and be able to redirect funds to expensive district initiatives, there's one option that achieves all three of these, and that is to create 5th and 6th grade centers. One final thing, I realize I'm out of time, but I'm going to go over, sorry. I've spoken with principals at 2 5th and 6th grade centers in Pennsylvania, both within driving distance of here. I hear many things from them that I like as a parent, things that not unlike what I've heard from Mr. Long when I've attended multiple 7th grade orientations. They're not identical programs, but they have innovative ideas, some that we use at the middle level now, but done in a way that preserves the innocence of students who in our district today are elementary children. They still have recess, for example, that they wouldn't have if 6th grade moved up to middle school. The students are together with other children at a similar maturity level, and both principals said spontaneously, I didn't ask, this structure is great for 5th and 6th graders. Teachers are able to collaborate more with other teachers the same grade because they're housed together. Both 5th and 6th grade centers that I talked to have active PTOs that support school trips, purchase technology, and materials for academic programs. They each handle busing differently, which suggests we have multiple options that we could explore. I spoke with a parent in one of these school districts, and what they said was, we all think it's weird, but it works. I have come away from these discussions knowing that this is not a strange or unique model for students. It can provide many advantages beyond the obvious financial and capacity advantages. I urge the school board to seriously consider this option as it addresses many goals you have as a school board and that I share as a Council Rock parent. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Robin Wells, and I have a son in Hillcrest, and we also have a daughter in the autism support program at Goodnote. And I want to first start off by commending the district for its autism support program. When I speak with other parents, we give the program the highest regard. We have seen our daughter flourish, and it's amazing. However, our son, who is in the humanities program, I can't say the same thing. I talk to my colleagues. I work in a pharmaceutical company in Princeton, and they say, you're in Council Rock, it's a great district. They must have a great gifted program. I can't say that, I can't agree with that. When our son did not qualify for math enrichment, which was dangled in front of us during our GIEP meeting last fall, that don't worry, you don't need to put a math goal in. I'm sure he'll qualify for math enrichment. Well, he didn't. He missed it by less than 5 points, 3 points to be exact. When I asked for retest, I was told no. Despite providing developmental psychologist testing from Bryn Mawr Child Study Institute, he still was denied entry into the math enrichment program. When I asked, after lengthy conversations with our math specialist, what his GIEP goal would look like this year going into 4th grade, I was given a cookie-cutter standard goal. And when I asked, I want that goal to be measurable, specific, realistic, and time-bound. Sorry, I'm in HR. That's what I live. It's my day-to-day work. I was told that this general goal, Jonathan would be given a test at the beginning of each unit. If he passed it, he could just do other work. That's not acceptable to me. I want my son to help move the middle. Denying our gifted kids a chance, those gifted kids who are in the gifted humanities program, who don't get into math enrichment, what are we doing for them? Right now, nothing. And I'm disheartened at that. And all of a sudden this week, my son comes home saying, hey, I need a binder for math sheets. The math specialist is apparently pushing in. To me, that seems like we're putting Band-Aids on a wound that needs sutures. I volunteered a year ago to be on the committee and was not placed on there, and I understand that and respect that decision. However, as an instructional designer, graduate degree in instructional design, stand-up trainer, experienced facilitator, I've designed curriculum across all topics. I again offer my services, more than happy to jump in, and I feel at this point where the website updates are, I feel you need more. There needs to be more parent involvement. You need to get instructional designers in there to help redesign the curriculum and pull through the resources that are already existing in our district. I know it's there. It just needs to be reformatted and recompiled. Thank you very much for your attention.
Mike Thorwart, Holland. I'm going to follow up with what Mrs. Wells said. In April of 2013, a review was done of our humanities program. It was found deficient. According to my studies of Title 22, Chapter 16, we're supposed to be doing things that are individualized for these kids. Right now, if your exceptionality is math, you get social studies. If your exceptionality is science, you get social studies. If your exceptionality is art, you get social studies. That's our humanities program. It is social studies. So I'm pleading. I've seen this board talk at length about buying a minivan for children with exceptionalities. Can you spend an hour and help us with this? This is dragging on. It's 16 months in. We've got no movement. We're not seeing anything in the classrooms. So please help us. Thank you.
My name's Teresa. My son is also in the humanities program. He is in math enrichment, but unfortunately what I've seen happen is that there are kids that I know that are even more advanced than my son, but maybe they had a bad day in testing or something like that. And unfortunately, they're not getting the things that they need out of the program. My son happened to have a good day. He was lucky enough he got in. But there's a lot of children that are in the humanities program. They're only getting social studies, and that's not enough to stimulate them. So following up, from the other two parents, what I would ask is that there is a change. We were here last year. We were at the board meeting. We did hear talk about it, but nothing has happened. So I would appreciate if something was done. So thank you.
Nancy Carroll, Newtown Borough. I really have empathy for the board to try to figure out which numbers work, what rooms, how many rooms are there in a building. And I struggled also because even when you look at Schrader numbers that Schrader put out, they're different in different reports. He was the architect for Churchville, and his Act 34 hearing, he said there were 29 regular education rooms. But when he figures out the 25%, the 100% capacity in the report, he only uses 25 of those rooms. At Goodenough, in the Act 34 hearing booklet, there's 33 regular education rooms, but he only uses 32. In Holland, in the Act 34, which was not a Schrader architect, that was someone else, there's 21 regular education rooms, but we're only using 19. By the time Schrader did his study, we were already down 30 sections in the elementary school. In 2012, we were down 30 sections by that time. So where did all those rooms go? What happens to them? What happens at a school like Holland or Newtown or somewhere else when they lose rooms? They're not empty. People take them over, people who are part-time, people who are not there all the time, people who are supposed to be aides in classrooms. So you have something to figure out, and that is how many rooms do you think are available in each classroom before you can redistrict? I went through the booklet myself, and in every school but one, there's a full-time classroom for every psychologist and every counselor. They're part-timers. A full-size classroom for a function. Back in the day when my kids, they usually had a desk and a table to talk to a few students at a time or parents. Now they have full-size classrooms. There were 3 schools that had OT and PT rooms that had no district special ed. Churchville being one of them, and the last 3 in the alphabet, which were, I believe, Wrightstown and whatever. So you need to go through the book and see what he is counting as rooms. And if you're okay with that, if you're okay with giving full-size rooms to part-time functions or small group instruction while other kids are out in trailers, then I say, I'm very disappointed. I hope that you will shepherd this process through and make sure that we have an efficiency study, not the study that Schrader gave us, an efficiency study on every classroom. And lastly, I'm disappointed that we're moving on with Newtown without talking about Holland Middle, because Holland Middle will get you the savings. And I want to thank the Goodnow PTO for the computers that they're giving to the children in their school. Goodnow is a large school, and I think it's wonderful that they're doing that. And it's my understanding that they only have 2 other carts. I would like somebody on the board to ask that question when that comes up for a vote. How many computers will Goodnow have at the end of this donation? Thank you.
Hello, good evening. I'm Paul DeRusso from Newtown. I just wanted to, again, commend the board for your patience, I think, with a lot of the information that's being thrown at you. But I want to remind you also, in the first time I spoke here, the comment has been made several times that it's never been the intent of the board to look to close schools. I just want to remind you of that again, and to make sure you're considering all options, especially in light of new data that's coming your way, and don't take that lightly. So if the real intent of the board is not to close schools, then review this information carefully before you make a decision. And I just want to make a comment too about, that was made earlier about the vans. I was in that meeting, I was here when that was discussed. A tremendous amount of information about how many vans, where they go, how much time they spend on the road, the students they pick up. That's the kind of discussion I would like to hear each of you engage in before you decide to close schools. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on to our first agenda item, which is capital planning. So, I think I'm going to start by letting Mr. Klein send us some information today, and I don't know if everyone's had a chance to review it or not. I know I have not, frankly, in detail, but if he wanted to say a few words about it, and then I think we want to discuss whether he should post it on the web. So.
I sent the board on Friday what was called a chart of work, which is the 19 specific tasks that we derived from the meeting last Saturday that talks about the things that the board had asked for information in a timeline. There were four items that were due on the 2nd of October, and so the information that was provided to you today was that October 2nd information. It involved a savings projection for Wrightstown. It involved a more comprehensive work with the modulars, where they exist, what it looks like to remove them. Mr. Taylor provided those. It's in an attachment. We talked to you about an administrative vision for elementary school, and we gave you a repurposing of Richboro Middle School, which I will admit is a very tentative plan. But those were the 4 things that were due for the 2nd, and those are the things that I provided to the board. We have a number of tasks that will be due on the 8th, which will be handed to you before we get to that meeting. And then you can see the rest of the information that's due over a period of time between now and the culminating work that will be done in the beginning of November. So again, I'm more than happy to answer any questions about the work that's handed to you and the work that we continue to do.
I don't have any concerns about it being posted. I think it would probably be helpful for the public. Does anyone else?
No, but I'd like the backup. So, number 3. Okay, number 3 recommendation on this capital work chart of work. Where's the backup that tells me how you arrived at that data?
I'll ask Mr. Reinhardt for that. He did the work on. He has it. It's about the staffing that you can save when you have a closing like that. And remember, I did give you information like this before, and that number has various flex in it. So some of that number could be could be reduced if the board repurposes that building and certain factors then become important about renovations in that building and energy uses. And it does not account for what might be savings ultimately in teachers if in terms of moving you actually save a section in terms of that move. So that it is really just the flat out front end savings if you take a building offline in terms of clerical support, administrative support, maintenance support, Airmark custodial, and some of that would get built back in if you repurpose the building.
Mark, when you say that, you have a number, transparency. There's a note here that says that Wrightstown will close will be a $620,000 approximate savings. So let me ask some questions around that, which is that is a one-time saving or that's an annual savings?
We had an interesting debate about that. It is a single year savings. That is an ongoing savings. So if you
the savings you will
it
have
is the
every
savings
year.
You would make in that first year. It would reduce your budget threshold $620,000, and then that savings would be flat over the remaining period.
It is hard for me to understand it because right off the top of the bat, there's an elementary principal in there. And that elementary principal alone, when we look at our salary schedule, is probably all in 150 to 160. That's all in. That's benefits, everything else, pension, everything else. So that means that beyond that, there's $450,000 of savings. That's all that comes out of that, including moving those children into other classes that I would think would at some element reduce educators, which we, and Mr. Reinhardt, I looked at, although he's not there, for $137,000 a piece. So that would mean that once we took that off, that would seem to say that we would only reduce the number of sections in the district by getting rid of all the sections in Wrightstown. How many classroom sections
No, he
are
said
there?
it wasn't sections.
How many classroom sections are there in Wrightstown?
13.
13.
He said it wasn't
So
sections.
I understand, but if I took out 13 and I distributed them elsewhere, with the optimization that happens, which increases class size, that only gets me three more teachers at $137,000 a piece, and I'm at the savings point I was, and all I've done is staff.
We didn't estimate that, and I don't know until we actually do the work whether you will make any of those savings based on the number of kids that move in the sections. So again, I'm telling you that what that is the administrative, clerical support, and maintenance that comes as a result of moving a building offline.
So for me, information that can't be justified fully shouldn't be given to us like that. If either you can come to a full number that adds in. This is a total job of work. I don't ask you to give me piecemeal work, and that's what's happened here. You're probably I'll give you this. You tried to meet a date. But it doesn't, it's a piecemeal piece of work. Until you take the principals in this district and you start with the top principals geographically, or the bottom ones, you can move in either direction, I don't care, and right-size this district with their help. Until you do a full total redistricting, you can't put projections like that. And truthfully, if you were to close any school, be it Wrightstown, Rolling Hills, Richboro, whatever, if you take a school offline, that's offline forever. So you're not saving just that 1 year. You're saving it year after year after year after year compared to having it online year after year after year after year. Now, as I mentioned at the last meeting, no, you can't just close the door and walk away. You're going to have to pay money. You have to keep a roof for as long as you keep a building, and you have to keep heat and air conditioning on, or you're going to have a big bunch of mold. But I wish, if you put this out in the community, the understanding that that has real underpinnings that are not included here is not going to be there. And so I want you to say to us, I would like to give you that information, but until we've done a total redistricting, until we've modeled it, we can't provide really accurate information in this area.
I don't know why it's not accurate. It's the cost of the principal, the art, the gym, the recess aides. If anything, it's understated because you may gain less sections and maybe there'd be some staff, but it's the cost.
It's the least number.
Yes, that's what I said.
It is the least, absolutely the least number of savings.
As I understood the question, frankly, It was, if we shut the building, what is the estimate? Not if we shut the building and you put the kids in this building and or that building
Because
and you.
that's how it's done. It's not done just turn out the lights and close the door and walk away.
Correct, so you can only go up from there. So it's a starting point.
Right, you put this out and what it'll be in the community is that's all we save. Why would we do it?
I guess I had the opposite reaction. I thought it was a lot of money.
If that was all we were going to save, I would ask why we put everybody through this. So I'm hoping we do much better than that. And we're going to do much better than that year after year after year after year. So that's a big question for me. The others, since we got this, whether it's 4 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock today, there's no way anybody can go through this. So have a discussion around this is hopeless tonight.
But if it does go out, it would be nice that it have some annotation that it's as to what that number is.
Every time I've given it to you, I've given you that annotation. I've told
Well,
you
no,
that
but in the spreadsheet, like if this spreadsheet were to go out on the web, it
well, that's
doesn't
why
it doesn't
the question was
say.
asked. Do you want it out now?
Right.
Do you want to have
Right,
the
so that's why
conversation
I'm
around
just giving my opinion that if it did go out, it should say
With
what
notes.
what that means.
Well, that's from my perspective on that. Sorry.
Oh no, I'm done on that one. There's another item later.
On that one, it would be useful, obviously, I think, for that, which is we should have categories where even if we put TBD, that says, this is the administrative cost, 620, staff, so that we understand there are more dimensions to it, even if they're not known now, because to Patty's point, which is, someone looking at that number could say, if that's the whole ball of wax, 620 is not sufficient. And I agree with Patty's precept here, which is that if I look at that number at 620, I go, is it worth even bothering? Now, because I have no idea what the range of the other numbers might be. That's my difficulty. I have no idea. We look at what the average cost per student is in the district. Closing the schools are going to move that number for those children much. A lot of that value will move with the child wherever they go. I think Mark and I talked all the time that based on the apportionment, of $15,000 a child, just picking a number, it works out like $5.4 million a year for that school. If those kids move to another building, it's not going to be 5.4 savings. Understand that. But there's an old joke that says, "Would you do something for $1 million?" People says yes. They say, "Would you do it for 1,000?" He goes, "No. What do you think I am?" And the answer is, when we know that, we're just figuring out price. I just need to know the difference right now. What's the maximum possible savings? What's the minimum? So that, am I not in line? So I have some component to at least apply some logic.
Well, for me,
620 looks like a number.
for me, it's not just the number, because the buildings that we're talking about closing have tremendous renovation needs. So closing a school might save $1 million, but for me, it takes away the urgency of what could be a $10 to $20 million renovation that building would need. So you can't quantify it. Any of the buildings we're talking about that could be closed, to renovate those buildings would be $20, $30, $40 million that we wouldn't have to spend with the same urgency as we would if there were students in them. So to me, there's significance to the numbers, and I struggle because we really don't have a way of knowing the exact number, but it is a sizable number, but even more sizable if we factor in that they are very, very needy buildings that will need renovation costs sooner rather than later if students remain in them.
If your underlying assumption is that those students could be put into another facility which doesn't have renovation costs also associated.
Well, yes, but the
Okay.
point is, many of our buildings have needs. So I'm weighing that all out. And so the neediest buildings are the ones, if we could save those costs, and, we can't. So to me, closing any of these schools could save tens of millions of dollars, but I can't say that because that's not a real number, but that is the truth. That it's not just simply that initial closing, it's what that could mean down the road, as we look at extending the lifespan of those buildings another 30 years. And because this document came in so late, I would absolutely not be in favor of posting anything until we've had a chance to thoroughly look at it.
Okay, that's fine. I'm asking.
I agree that we shouldn't post it right now. I'm all for everything being open to the public, but as everyone said, we haven't had an opportunity to look at it. I think that we did a disservice to the administration by requesting this number on this date. It should be a line item on each one of the models, because every model is going to have a different set of savings. So I would like to see it separately, and I absolutely would like to see the numbers backed up and not just a hard number on a line like that.
So I think they're all valid points. I would tell you, we have a public meeting next week, and I don't know what everybody else has been hearing in the community, but I am besieged by people who are saying, what are you actually voting on? And what are you actually doing? So I think, and it was brought up on Saturday when we met, you know, if there are things that we think are motions we might want to vote on November 6th, because there's a large number of things that people have asked for a lot more information on that I don't know that we can put motions out there. Last week it was brought up that maybe moving forward on a Newtown Middle School, that could be a motion. You might not all agree with it, but by November 6th, people could vote on that motion or not vote on that motion. But I am getting the, and I think it's partly because I'm running the meeting, not any other reason, some feedback that we're going to have a public meeting next Thursday night, and we've asked for a lot more information. We have proposals out there from 3 groups who took a year, and I'm not trying to rush it, but I think we need to tell the public what we're expecting them to speak on.
I think because we made that schedule, that
Yeah.
put in all of these meetings with all of this talk, and now we're committed to having all these meetings with all of this talk. We're in over our heads with all these meetings and all this talk, and we've said we're not making a motion on anything until November 6th. And we're going to hear stuff now for a month, and then we're going to make a motion. And that's okay. I'm going down that road. It's making me crazy, but I have the same feeling that you do. I have been met by people who want me to make a motion. I was told to make a motion this week about exactly where we would place Achieve. Then I had to say that I thought it was premature because we don't know where we're putting anybody yet, sort of. And so until we can get a bigger picture straightened out, we can't make promises about any one point. But there's just, I mean, I would make motions that started at the most radical and worked their way back, or make little motions and go forward and vote them up or vote them down. But if we're going to wait until everybody talks to us, and if that provides the legal requirement for closing a school, then that's what we have to do.
Well, I think after we make a motion that we would like to move in that direction, the direction was that we'd have to wait 3 months?
Well, you first have to do these public meetings, we were told.
No, the public meetings come after the announcement.
Well, so then we have
So-
more public meetings.
Yeah, so you if you did it on November, you'd have, correct me, 3 months of time for the public to weigh in before you could actually then make the motion to actually do it. So, am I describing that somewhat correctly?
Somewhat, yep.
Somewhat.
Well, if it's something
So
important,
there's just
please
a lot
correct
more
it.
meetings ahead of us. So some of that, I mean, I don't know. It looked to me from our discussions like some parts of this that require those legal steps are probably.
I think they're after November 6th, is my
So we
point.
have to wait till November 6th. I don't know what we're going to talk to all these people about. But maybe they'll come and maybe they won't. See this crowd here? I bet we can fit this crowd in just where we are, but.
Well, people have come to me also and said, you know, what are we voting? And, you know, and I said, while the motions themselves are not framed, the topics are very clear. So I have said to people, if you want to come and talk, we're talking about some pretty broad categories. The relocation of services at LSAC, the potential of closing schools, the potential of renovating and/or rebuilding schools, and redistricting. So that's what I want to hear comments on, what I'm hoping to hear feedback on at those meetings. And while it's not specific as to what the nature of the motion is, it doesn't matter, because they're sort of all up for grabs. The dialogue is important and will help frame us to see what direction the motions would take.
And
But
what concerns me is we took an ad in the newspaper. We've talked about it here how many times over and over and over again. And I don't want people to come back in 3 months and say to us, I didn't know. I had never heard about it. When we had done it for an entire year before. Please, when the school district sends you, if you're on our listserv, read it. Please read it. You might be busy, have a busy life, but please read it. Read it for the next 6 months so that we don't hear that you weren't told.
The discussion about closing a school, not closing a school. Mr. Reed, we had asked council for some more information on what does it actually mean to close a school and the real definition of it versus delisting a school. Has that come back to us yet?
Yes.
That
Do you want it here?
I'm glad for it. Yeah, the question.
If you close a school, if a school doesn't open when the rest of the school's open and it's empty of students and empty of teachers, you've closed the school.
Is that by, and that's by law, or that's just a...
That's by our opinion on what is meant by the statute.
Okay, so
with
you gave us that in
respect to
writing?
closure of school.
Do we have that in writing?
I'd be happy to give it to you.
Okay, because this goes to
does
the...
that preclude that building from becoming a school at a future date?
No, it does not.
Well, would it have to be recertified as a school? Would it have to be... See, this
I
is the
don't know
question.
about that particular
Well, that was the nature of
item,
the
but I
question.
don't think so, other than with respect to...
Well, that was the
Maple
nature...
Point.
Well, that
So
was... I was trying to ask a series of questions.
So
I
take Maple
I
Point.
apologize. I was trying to ask a series of questions. Because the issue that I had with this was...
Isn't that a serious answer?
We have hearings to close a school, but if we simply don't send children to the school, would we be in violation of a rule or a law? Meaning, I'm very concerned, I've said it before, about delisting a school with PDE versus just not using a school for 1 year or 2 years. Just, would it be delisted automatically,
The
or would we
nature of your
violate the law?
concern is because you don't know that it would be able to come back in as a school?
Correct. So that's the first part of it. So the second part of this is, when I look at the list of things that are here, there are some things we've put on the list now which are, in my opinion, are low dollar value items. Last time, just so we're clear, make a motion, I tried to kill the full day kindergarten discussion last time. So we did have a discussion around that about being able to make a motion. To Mr. Reed's point, and to the community's, the board's discussion about we can't do anything until we have the hearing. As being part of a group that's been here when we've closed school, this building, the board makes the intention to take the action and begins moving forward with it. The effect of the hearing is at Act 34. Act 34 is building one. I don't know, maybe it's Act 43 backwards. I don't know. But whatever the effect is of closing a school, Act 28, I don't know, it's Act 21, something like that.
It's, I don't know what act number it is.
But it's a school, okay. But, that is a matter of function. It's so, you already made the decision to do what you want to do, and then you begin the actions. It's the same thing as when we do the Act 34 hearings to build a school. We've already decided we want to build the school. There's a requirement in the law to do that. I don't want to say that it's merely perfunctory, but it is. It is. If someone stood up, gave us something, and we had an epiphany, we could certainly reverse course. But don't think that you have to make your decision 3 months after. You can make your decision tonight to do whatever you want to do, and then follow it up with the actions necessary to comply with the law. Okay? For me, low-value items here. The building of the pole barn at North and South, it's a great deal. It's 25 hours of Doug's time to figure out whether we're building it, and I don't know where it came from, but to me that's so low value. I'd love to have Doug spending his time doing something else.
I didn't, when I went out to Twining, and as I look at North and South, a lot of our equipment is out in the weather all the time.
Correct.
Out in the weather all the time. So this is far down the list of needs. People
Agreed.
spend no time on this right now. But as a list of the 47 balls that we have in the air right now, one of them ought to be looking at how we take care of our stuff. The stuff we don't want, we put in high-priced real estate. The stuff we use all the time and need to work to mow the grass and to push away the snow, we leave that out in the sun and the rain and the sleet and the hail. There's
But
something wrong with
My
that.
point is, as Stephen Cuffey said, you take care, you do the big jobs first, and you prioritize. That's
The problem
not a
is
big
that
one.
those little things have never made it to the top. And I think that's a shame for that department, that those things have never, ever crossed our minds as something we ought to take care of when we spend a goodly amount of money on them.
But we have to set the priorities.
Yes.
I mean, that's part of my struggle. I hear what you're saying, Patty, but I feel like we keep asking this administration to come back with something, and then they come back with something, and it's 2 weeks later in a different light, so we have to figure out, I mean, these people have day jobs that I'm sure they're struggling to do with all that we're asking. So we
This is
have to
their day
figure
job.
out- No, but they have other jobs. Before we started capital planning, they did other things.
Right, but this is a perfectly legitimate use of administrative time.
I don't disagree.
To try to run this district in a fiscally responsible way. And that means not to use the space we have well. Totally good thing for administration to do. I am totally shocked.
I'm saying the report. Do we want a report back, or are we saying, because the
I want
report
an
takes
action.
time?
I want an action. I want to see a redistricting. I don't know how many ways I can say I want to see if children from anywhere can be accommodated in the building space that we have. We are down 1,400 kids. Given, let's say, possibly, there were 600 or 700 in the trailers. We're down 600 kids. We have at least 2 schools that are in the 300, 350 range. I have to believe, and that's not our peak, okay? Our peak is like 1981, 82, 85, 86, 87, when we had lots more children in this district. I can't figure how Mr. Klein was ever able to say to me the other night, we can't do anything for 4 years. You can't, really.
I
Why?
never said that.
You
I want to be very clear. 1 year I said, you asked me about closing Wrightstown, and my presentation said for the 15-16 school year, don't close Wrightstown. And by the way, on the 8th, those models will come so you can see them. But I want to be clear, I never said anything past 15-16. So if it was misunderstood, I want to be clear that presentation we made the other night was about the 15-16 school year, can you close Wrightstown? And the answer was, in our opinion, no.
And I said, I walked to the table and I said to you, when do you think you can do that? And your response to me was 4 years. And so your response to me was 4 years, and actually you were standing there, so it's not there. But 4 years, nothing can be done 4 years. So unless you have already modeled it for yourself, I don't know how you can make that determination. So I would have thought that work was done before. So I'm really surprised we're just doing it now. That's their job. They're the only ones that can do it. And they need probably not Mrs. McClendon. She's education. She's not numbers and pieces. Mr. Pinahero would be a better guy to go to see where the kids are. He picks them up in buses every day. Mr. Pinahero and the principals could figure this out. That's who normally does this.
Well, you know, Jack Pinero is involved in I guess the difference that we need to look at is, I think, Kyle, I think what I heard you saying was that there are strategic and there are tactical things that this administration's tied into, and that a lot of this is strategic, and it's true. And I think that's the struggle that we have, which is we still want them to do the tactical things at the same time and the strategic. The question I put to you is, and maybe using Jack Pinero would be part of it, would be, you know, where do we leverage people? Where do we have people whose tasks might, and Jack, maybe yes, maybe no, I just used because she brought the name in, that, you know, how can we reorganize a little bit to get people freed up to do the strategic so they can focus on the strategic?
We're working on it. We
Well,
are moving, and next week is when We promised to give you some of these models based on the Decision Insight tool that will show you the things that you've asked to see. It's not going to be perfect because no matter where I move,
Did you change the numbers that are in there that were the old numbers?
the new enrollment numbers are in Decision Insight
What, from what date?
from September of 2014.
Current numbers.
The current numbers.
So for me, I think asking questions and getting information is great, and there are definitely certain things I need more information on, but I'm ready to, frankly, outside of waiting to hear public comment, I'm ready to vote on a couple motions. So I'm going to float them out there. You guys can tell me I'm crazy, but I'm going to start with, I'd like to see a motion that says we will move all non-student-based activities from LSAT to Space and North, and if there's any cost associated with that, I'd like that valued. But I'd certainly like to move forward in that direction. I'd be ready to look at a motion on November 6th that said that. Non-student activities, just to be clear, not Achieve, not Sloan. Non-student activities from LSAT to North.
Do you know what, so that's the knock, and what else?
I think it's mainly computer, but I don't know. I'm
would be
up to the
coordinator
administration to look at
What?
non-student things. I'd like to see that.
The knock, office space.
And you guys might vote it down, but I
fine.
would
Keep
like to
going.
see, I would like to see a motion for that. I'd like to see a motion that says we're gonna, move forward into the next steps to build a new Newtown Middle School. I know there's people on the board who don't wanna do that. For me personally, I'm in favor of it, as opposed to renovating it. Somebody may want a renovation motion. You know, we gotta vote up and down ultimately, but I don't need more information.
So
I
you
need
want
to-
to make these motions next week?
No, I'd like them to be the ones that are gonna come on the 6th, and what I'd like to do is say to the public, these are motions I, as a board member, are gonna vote on November 6th, and I'm here for the next month to hear your opinion of them. I have a leaning today, I've made most of that public, but I wanna get down to the point where I'm saying to the public, okay, these are the things I'm gonna vote on, you come tell me what you think about them, if you have information to add to what
What else is
we've
on your
heard.
list?
What else? So, I'm sorry, but I'm not, unlike Patty sometimes in that I'm trying to have some things move forward. I think renovating Holland Middle School is a tremendous goal, and I would like to see us vote on renovating Holland Middle School with the goal of closing Richboro Middle School. I'd also, once both the Newtown and the Holland Middle School are voted on, and should they pass, I'd like to have that time frame laid out by Doug on how we straddle that time-wise along with financially. But I'd like to see those as part of our 5-year plan, because I think that's a good idea. What we do with Richboro Middle School, I'd love to say I'd be able to vote on that in November 6, 2014, but I don't think that's realistic, since I've been told it's gonna take 3 years. I would hope that at the end of that time, that people would do an evaluation, whoever's sitting on the board at that time, should we sell it, should we renovate it and use it? I don't know that I could vote on a decision what to do with that property, but that, I would like to say that's the direction I'm headed in. Those to me seem to be the easy ones. I think there should be a motion about the house track, whether we'd like to move forward on towards selling it, or we'd like to move forward on doing something else with it. I don't, we haven't talked about the house track a lot, but that is on my mind. When it comes to information I might read after looking at the proposals and people who have worked for a year and some of the other information, I feel like I have 2 gigantic choices at the 100,000 foot level, not down to each classroom. Am I gonna close an elementary school, or am I gonna get trailers offline? Because I think I've been pretty clearly presented information at the elementary school that I can't do both. So for me, I think we could have them, if we have enough information to vote more specifically, great, but I'd be really good with, I would prefer to get trailers offline. I'd like to see a way to get the trailers offline. That's a bigger priority for me than closing an elementary school. Those were the items that I wrote in my homework, and I would have loved to have had them out and have everybody, but I'm sorry, I was very busy this week. But that's my feeling. So people can come talk to me about those ideas if they'd like to. Those are the things I'd like to move forward. I don't have all the specifics on, you know, is it 3 classrooms or 4 classrooms in this one? I know that we're gonna get some information about if we take trailers offline, because we've asked Mr. Klein. But as far as me as a board member creating a goal, that's a bigger priority for me.
Okay, but to make a motion to remove trailers, I'm going to guess that's going to pass 9-0. But really what you're saying is redistricting.
Yeah, I'm saying, well,
So, I mean,
whatever.
but I'm just saying, if you're framing out what your motions would be.
I'm saying
the,
is a
the
priority.
motion is really, though, to do a wholesale redistricting that will allow the trailers to come off.
I'm not even at that level of detail, honestly, Denise. I'm at the
Well, but I'm
level
just
of
saying, to
saying,
me, I don't-
what's my priority? Do I spend a bunch of time working about closing elementary school? No. I'd rather all the time was focused on, tell me how you can take the trailers offline and give me, tell me what you think it looks like, and if I like it, maybe I do this, maybe I do that. And at the end of the day, is it entirely possible that I might say, don't take those two off because, I don't want to send kids from 2 hours to get redistricting, but as far as my priorities go on where I'd like to see us move forward in detail, so I could say that's the redistricting plan, so we get trailers offline, I'd vote for. My priority is to get trailers offline.
For almost 10 years.
It's not specific
All
enough.
I'm saying is that if you want,
It
I
has
make
to
a
be
motion
part.
to remove all the trailers, we all say yes, but that really, in essence, what that means is, what do you have to do to get the trailers off? So the motion is really to redistrict so that, which will
was-
yield the removal of a certain
and
number
I
of
I
trailers.
guess what I would say to you is that one's not fully formed into a motion. That's simply where my priority is to hear the information from Mr. Klein next week that shows me what happens when we do that.
For 10 years or so, every year we do a budget. Every year I hear Mark's voice somewhere saying, you pick the number, we'll make it work. That's what he says every year, right? We argue, is it 0.94, is it 0.61? And his comment every year is, you make the number, we'll make it work. This is compared to the prior administration before Mark. We used to sit as a board and try and make individual decisions. It was like, we've all seen the picture of a swing designed by committee. Everybody, or a camel's a horse designed by committee. So Denise, to your point, we can't run the district if we don't give the administration certain degrees of freedom. And to that end, I say, if we came in and say, take the trailers offline, that's the motion, make it happen by, give the date, and maybe you want to do it as a sliding scale, that I want 75% offline by X and 100% offline by the year after X. That's our direction, and within that framework, Mark has to, just like he does with the budget number, make it work. If that
I
means
don't
he has to
disagree. I'm just-
redistrict,
For the clarity, for the comments, the conversation started with what is the public coming to talk about. If it looks like we're talking just about trailers, I think it's a little disingenuous that it doesn't let the public know that the implication of that is redistricting.
that's fine. No,
all I'm
I
saying.
hear you, but
I
my
think the
point is...
plan would have to be out there,
And
because
I think your comment is what does the public understand? And my point is to the board to say, we can't design every aspect of it, because we're not going to design if we try and craft every aspect of it, we will undoubtedly leave not enough degrees of freedom to do the functions we think we've told them to do. So at some level...
There's a difference between designing every aspect and understanding
Agreed.
what you're asking
And
for. So
I've caused
that's
this
all.
confusion, so it's my error. On redistricting and trailers, we would have to have a plan. We
Well,
would
that's
have
number
to be able
4
to
on
say
his list.
to the public, I'm simply saying, and I shouldn't have included in my list of motions, I'm simply saying at this point in time, I would like to get to a motion. I also think we have to respect the fact to our timeline that we're a week behind. We pushed this whole process off a week. We would have had a week of conversation. So it feels a little more rushed to us, I think, because we lost a week of
It
of
doesn't feel
conversation.
rushed at all to me. So if tonight is the night for making motions that we want to vote on in a month, then here's my motion. I would vote to close Wrightstown Elementary. That vote failing, I would vote for a total redistricting of the district to optimize the use of our facilities. Keeping class size at the class size levels set by
The class size committee.
our policy at the time, today. That's what I would vote for those three things, and I'd vote from the most radical to the least motion. But I will say this to you. In my vote for optimizing the district and taking trailers off, I want all the trailers off. if there is to be a situation where we're not going to take some off now, maybe we'll take a few off later, I won't vote for that. I further will not vote to build anything or renovate anything unless we show this community that we are willing to be as efficient in the use of the buildings we own as we can possibly be. And so there'll be no vote from me for renovating Holland or renovating Newtown or building Newtown new or doing anything along the lines of spending thousands and thousands of dollars as long as we're running classrooms at occupancies way below where they belong. And until we can, you know, the trailers, we've been talking about the trailers, cripes, since my children went to school. They're 32 and 29. My neighbors have talked to me about those trailers over and over. That's the lowest level of, one of the lowest levels of competence. But if that's all we can do this year, that's all we can do this year. But I don't think we should take anything off the table. I think we should start at the top and work our way down. But understand that for me, we have got to show that we are being as efficient in the use of our facilities as we can be. And I don't think we can honestly say that right now. I can't. And so.
Wendy,
Yes.
I appreciate you wanting to move forward, and I agree that maybe it's the time to start making some motions. But before any votes on renovating Holland Middle, before any votes on a new construction of Newtown Middle or its renovation, before any vote on the trailers being removed, we must commit for now and the future what the grade configuration is. Because we must commit to what the grade configuration is before we decide on renovations of the schools and the removal of the trailers. So to me, that's a precondition. And we've had some discussion on it. My guess is that we're not going to go with a 5-6 school. That's my guess, but I can't say what each board member will eventually vote on. My guess is we won't put the 6th graders up. We'll keep them in the elementary schools, and maybe that's the best thing educationally. But we haven't had a full discussion on that. And I think that, like I said, is a precondition before we vote on renovations or removal of trailers.
I mean, to that point, because I want to echo something you're saying. So on this spreadsheet, item 12 says model a 6 to 8 middle school program and how it would impact the elementary schools and the potential middle school building renovation programs. It says 25 hours for that. But really to answer that with any precision, again, it goes back to drawing lines and redistricting and then saying, well, and having Doug say, well, then the middle school is going to be about this big, and at Newtown Middle it'll cost about this much. So, I mean, it's actually a big amount of work to do it right. So in that 25 hours that supposedly is going to land on us on October 30th, which is awfully close to November 6th, and to Rick's point, how do you make motions when something like that's up in the air? I mean, are we sincerely as a group thinking that 6 to 8 is truly up in the air? I'm not. So kind of like what Jerry did at the prior meeting to full-day kindergarten, should we do that to this item now?
We can give direction to the administration not to pursue the exploration of 6 to 8. If you want to make the motions, we can. It doesn't have to be a motion. We can just poll the board to survey. So at least there are 3 of us at this point who would say at this point to Mark, don't invest the time in 6 to 8. You, Wendy, and I.
You're saying yes or no, Patty? I'm sorry.
No for 6 to 8. I don't want to see 6th graders with the older kids.
I don't either.
So is any of the board members willing to?
There's 4 of us.
I don't want to see 6 to 8.
There's 5. Okay,
So that's fine. I'm just saying that, that's maybe a feeling on your part, and I think it's a feeling in the community. And for me also, but whether educationally, socially, it's best. I'm not an educator. I don't know. I haven't done the research on that, so I don't know. Maybe the administration would be the ones to guide us on that. And not just educationally and socially, but again, taking into consideration our facilities, whether they can handle, and whether they can will impact on the scope of the renovations for Holland and any new construction for Newtown Middle, or the renovations to Newtown Middle. So But the board is saying keep the sixth graders in the elementary school, it's fine. To me, I think that decision has to come from the educators, and that's the administration.
Well, at this point, the administration has now had 5 board members indicate that item number 12 is not worth pursuing at this point.
Well, and the administration gave us a document that's a vision of what the elementary schools are, and it kind of touched on obliquely the issue of whether we would move the children up to 6 to 8. And so when you read that document, it kind of feels like there wasn't a strong energy to move 6 up. But
That would be correct.
okay.
My concern about that, and obviously that's the majority thought here, but my concern is it takes another option off the table. We did 6 through 8 for years. I mean, how many years did we do that? And as I said, I went through 6th through 8th, and it was
Not
just
very
fine.
many. We had a couple years where we had 6th grade, and then 6th grade sort of filled into spots. But actually, with the 7 to 9 was a longer format for Council Rock School District than it was at the 6th grade level. 6th grade filled in when we needed some space, so when Goodnote was over running with kids, we had actually 6th grade at Newtown Middle School for a little while. But I don't know, Mr. Desko, can you remember how long we ran a 6 to 8 format? I don't think it was for a very long time.
No, it's been well more than 20-some years, many years.
Yeah, it was at least 12. I mean, I wasn't, when I was in kindergarten, I wasn't tracking it, but it was at least 12 years that I remember, so I'm
Well, way back,
disappointed.
I think they're talking about when they were here.
Yeah, I understand, but I don't quite understand what's changed, but I'm disappointed to hear that we're taking that off the table. I would like to say, though, that is it appropriate for us to digest this, send back to Wendy priorities, if we could just mark priorities and scan it back and send it to Wendy and see what we really need to talk about. I'd really like to know why it costs $90,000 to look at pole barns. I'm not sure.
Doug, you can answer that. We were trying to put the numbers there that would bring us to a project total. So $90,000 for pole barn, explain that, for the 3 pole barns that you suggested.
The $90,000? It's an estimated cost for professional fees relative to not only the architect's time, but engaging a civil engineer to perform the necessary land development that would have to happen. The area of disturbance would probably require a submission to the Bucks County Conservation District. So there are other things. Again, when you're asking for these numbers, it's difficult to say this is the exact fee for this work. What I've asked for, though, in the meantime, is an actual proposal from the architects that would assist us in providing this work. So I'll get that by the middle of October and have more detailed numbers to share with you then.
Again, I put that out there, not as a motion for you to go build it this minute, but as one more thing that we need to think about doing.
Well,
Mrs. Sexton,
That's why I'm suggesting.
I know you do.
That's why I'm suggesting that we each go through and prioritize these things and feed it back to the president.
I can do a
if we can
summary
do
of
that.
it, and it's just
because
not hard.
I think there are
If you
certain
rank 'em.
things that we could look at.
Well,
So
could
by when?
Could we remove item 9, the pole barn, from the discussion for the time being? Would anybody else agree now with that? Because, again, it's not one of those
Not
decisions.
Mrs. Sexton.
That's
She's over there
fine.
shaking her head.
Isn't that board member? I'm trying to get their time. We just had an argument, a discussion about strategic, dynamic, tactical. They don't have time to do both. That's not the time for $90,000 savings spending at this point. That's not where I'm jumping on.
Well, I agree, but to me, it's really more a function of, it's a philosophical discussion. Do we want something like that on our property? I don't need to know how much it costs. If we are going to do it, if we think it's important, if we need it, if it's something that we embrace as an idea.
It doesn't need to be on this time frame. That's my
Yeah,
point.
well, that's what I'm saying. If you want, I mean, I would take that cost out, and I would just say more as a conversation. Is that the way we choose to approach
That
storage?
could also be a December conversation.
Yeah.
That's
Right,
not
it doesn't have
muddying
to be
I mean,
everything.
and that could be a fallout of, by taking trailers off, that's going to be necessary. So it's not a standalone item. For me, it's going to become a necessary event to accommodate a much bigger and much more important change that we're going to make. So you could save 25 hours right there.
Okay, so that's, Patty, you agree from that perspective? Okay, there are 3. Do any other 2 board members say that we
Yes.
don't need this by, so that's 4? You, me, Denise?
I don't
Wendy?
even know how it made it to the list.
Okay, so you're willing to let it not be on the list for the time being? Okay, so that one comes off
All
the
we did
list.
was make a list when we were here the other day, so there were some things I read I didn't remember, so.
Mark, all the time we're giving you back, we want, in the other proposals.
Well, I do have a
detail.
replacement
We're not
for that.
exactly-
No, no,
Yeah, I have
No,
some
I
things
do.
on the
I
list.
have,
Okay, but,
No, go ahead.
I would like,
ahead, I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Klein and I spoke about this, but I guess we missed modeling closing Rolling Hills along with Wrightstown, and I think that should also be on the list. Yes?
it's your list. Okay,
Well,
do other,
wait, are
If
there
it's
five-
my list, then I have a few other things I'd like to add.
Well,
Simply
let's see if we have-
copied those things that you talked about on Saturday, and gave this to you in a format that. based
okay,
on
are there
the
others who want to see that modeled?
Well, in that spirit, I'd like to see on 15, what would be
Well-
Wait, let's do
repurposing.
this one.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, are there others who want to see that modeled
I
as
mean,
well?
philosophically, I agree. I just think practically, it's not a possibility. It can't happen in the near future. So for me, I don't want it.
Well, that's why I was like, I'd rather the time was spent on taking trailers off than even closing the school, but
Yeah, I'm
that's,
not-
that's apparently my.
So I'm not jumping, so Bill's not, I'm not jumping on the Rolling Hills
Wait a
analysis.
minute, I'm not talking about necessarily closing them both the same day. I'm talking about looking at the same model of closing them. We're going to have timelines in the model, right? We're not assuming that they all close on October 2nd, correct? We're just looking
No,
at a timeline.
the idea is to try to, I think
Could-
we were
could
saying
we-
a 5-year, we are
could-
trying for a 5-year strategy.
Yeah.
Could we alter the
But-
structure?
Do you
of the
just want a
question?
number? Is that what all you want, or what?
Well, I want to,
He
what
wants
do you
the
mean,
same
the number?
comparison for Rolling Hills that we're doing
Sure.
for Wrightstown.
Why wouldn't we? That's one of our most inefficient schools also we're talking about, right? So why wouldn't we look at a model, since we're doing models and spending the time, how do we overlook that elementary school? And we're only focusing on Wrightstown. Doesn't make sense to me.
For me, at this point, I think that, and I was going to say, I'd modify the request that model closing Wrightstown to say to the administration, model closing one of the schools, choose the one that gets the most, that works best in terms of bringing off the other. You have 9 board members who conceptually agree with trailers are not a good thing. So whichever of the 2 schools would close and be compatible with that, for me, I'm fine. But you figure out which of the 2.
So you think we can close the school and get?
No, I don't think so, but I'm willing to play the game that people
And
want to
I
play
do
this
think so.
idea.
And I
So
do
that's-
think so.
Okay,
So but I want to say.
that's all I was trying to understand.
But that's what I want to say to the administration. Certainly, I don't think modeling both, because then we come here and we argue
But
about
if they're gonna
which.
pick which one, they gotta model both anyway.
Well, but
Right.
there's
Right.
higher level modeling they can do.
You can't just throw a
to
dart
qualify
at
it.
it.
Okay, all right,
So we have to, you have to take the steps to look at each one.
all right, I'm in,
Or together.
I'm in.
You're in for what?
Otherwise, we're not
Model
doing our
modeling
full,
Rolling Hills.
we're not doing our full.
We're
due
gonna do
diligence.
Wrightstown,
So
model Rolling
who's
Hills.
in for modeling Rolling Hills at this point? Kyle, Wendy?
If you were to model them evenly, to say, but if you're saying that you're in agreement, that probably if there were at any, there's not enough votes, so it's theoretical probably. But if you were to say, Wrightstown today, first, do you want to know what it will look like for him to model 2 years out Rolling Hills or 3 years out Rolling Hills? Or do you want to model it as an either or?
I would like the administration to give us the best scenario in each one of those cases. I don't want to, same thing, I don't want to go in and choose where we're filling classrooms, where they need to be filled. That's the specialists, right? The specialists that we pay every year. I want to see, and I don't know how we just look at closing Wrightstown without looking at closing other elementary schools that are potential closings, or together. I don't know how to get to that answer without the information from the school
See,
district.
for me, it's like
Because the
this.
direction we gave them was close Wrightstown. That doesn't make sense to me. It's just taking the other ones off the table. So Patty, if they come back and say we should close Wrightstown in 2016 and we should close Rolling Hills in 2018, or not close either, I want to see the data for it. But I just want to see
everyone
how
has a
they
different
derive
thought
that.
process, but my thought process there is if trailers are gone, Wrightstown is now a 1 section per grade school. That's not true of Rolling Hills. Rolling Hills is at least still a 2 section per grade school, and if you run it based on the way it had been run in years past, maybe more than that. So there's a big difference between those schools with trailers gone. So that's, for me, in the next 5 years, I don't think it's really possible to get rid of trailers in Wrightstown.
So for me, it's sequential. You start with one, and you can't determine what the next is until you watch it for a while.
Well, for me, I mean, I recognize this as a 5-year plan. When I read this document, it was only Wrightstown that was listed. I was comfortable with that because it's a sequencing of things. For me, if we're going to close an elementary school next year based on the assessment of the data that I so one, I don't think it's necessary.
We're going to have a 5-minute recess, and then we'll resume with Mr. Cook's comments. Mr. Byland.
Yeah, but why?
Because we didn't see it in the right moment. It was right after you said a bunch of like that. I want you to know that that was my thought process. Yeah.
I'm cold. Do you have a new mic? Does it work?
I have a little stubby mic, so I'll be.
Talk into it, see if we can hear you.
Yeah, we did a test
Oh,
already.
we did.
Ladies, other than myself, any of my
Did you have rock and roll tape? I'd like to let Mrs. Brooks finish her comments. Ms. Brooks?
I believe we were talking about modeling other school closings. So what I was saying was that in assessing all the data that we've received so far, if we're going to close a school next year, I believe, an elementary school next year, I believe the only option we have is Wrightstown. And so because it's all well and good to talk about a 5-year plan, but the reality is beyond next year, the composition of this board is different. Things could take a different direction. And so we don't, you know, other than setting the framework that could close Richboro Middle, that's a little bit different. But because the decision to close an elementary school is a much more immediate thing and can be done, you know, potentially without other long-term things. So like closing Richboro Middle would involve renovations to Holland Middle. But closing Wrightstown would not require renovations to any other buildings. And so therefore, that is the more reasonable school to look at if we're going to look to close an elementary school next year.
I just want to add something to your thought, just because you're invoking time. So if we're going to get rid of trailers and redistrict, that's a huge activity across the whole district. While we're at it, if there's one other item we can do, we should do it then. And so some of these, you know, if we're going to redistrict to get rid of trailers, it's probably going to be pretty soon. And that may mean, of course, after we do something with the middle schools, we'll have to do some more redistricting, at least at that level. But if we're going to redistrict soon to get rid of trailers, if we're also going to close a school, we should do it all at once. That's, I don't know whether...
I mean, it all ties in. So that's why I personally would not be in favor of taking up the administration's time on modeling things that are really, for me, not feasible in the short term, and potentially beyond the control of the 9 of us at this point. The other thing is, no, it just went out of my head. I'm sorry. Were you going to say something, Rick?
Yes, I wouldn't be agreeable to Mark's proposal to model closing Rolling Hills, staggering it.
Would not? What did you say? Would not? I just missed that. Would or would not?
Be in
I
favor.
would be.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I would be. Staggering it and taking into consideration the enrollment projections over the next several years. It would give us, I think, a blueprint for the future that we can look at. And I think it would be helpful to us now with redistricting, removing trailers, closing Wrightstown. If we see what the administration would say about closing Rolling Hills in 3, 4, 5 years after, whatever, after the closing of Wrightstown. I'm not saying Wrightstown is closing, but if the board would vote to close Wrightstown, what would the administration say, given all the factors, including the enrollment projections, with regard to Rolling Hills? So, like I said, I think it does give us a blueprint for the future.
I think the fallacy in your charge is, or the error in your charge is the time. And I think that the challenge there is, if you say to the administration, I want to have a model with all the trailers off, that's, for me, all the trailers off are number one. if all the trailers can come off and there's capacity to close a school, once you've got the trailers off, model closing a school. But here's my thing. All of this is predicated on student population between 11,250 and 11,750. That's all of this assumptions based on that. To your point about, then I'd like you to model that if we drop to between 10,750 and 11,250, what's your next building that you're coming off? Or 11,000, 10,500. Because telling them what year doesn't buy me anything, because we're right down to a hole, because if population goes wrong, we've got plans that don't work. If you tell me these are the conditions you model around, they can make some grand assessment about what will the grades be, how many students in each population. They've done that for many years. I'll trust them to do it. At that point, tell me what school comes off and how you'll reconfigure. Telling them what year you want doesn't work because the population goes up. The year and the population don't work.
But of course, there's no error in the analysis, because if the population changes, if the demographics change, then of course we can look at it at that point. It doesn't hurt us to have the model now.
Well,
I think Mark is
an
correct.
exercise in futility.
I don't think so. I think Mark is correct in asking for that now. It doesn't hurt. I understand it takes up the administration's time, but I think it would be a useful thing for us to see at this point.
But sometimes if models don't work at all, you don't have to spend much time. So 30 seconds into it, you may say, yeah, this isn't going to happen, and I don't know that'll be the case. But so I would be willing to accede to the request, because I think about 30 seconds into it, the realization will be this is not possible anytime soon.
All right, how about if we ask the administration to give us some feedback on it? Let's start with that, because now that makes 5, and some people are in the middle.
What is 5?
Mark, Rick, me, Kyle, and Bill.
Okay, I didn't hear Kyle.
I'd be equally in favor. To be perfectly frank, for me, and I know this will be met not too well from some on this board, I will really struggle closing any elementary school next year. I'd model 2 schools after we figure out what we're doing with the other levels. So I'd model 2 schools. I think it's unfair to just model one and not the other, both of which were mentioned in the recommendations. I'm not suggesting that needs to be done for me by November 6th. It doesn't. But if we're going to model one, we should be modeling both. I think we are, I know, I want to get things done too. I want to move forward too.
Well, do you want to do it as, I'm just asking this, do you want to do it as an either or do you want to do it as in a sequential order? So that's the question. Do you want to do it, we could close Rolling Hills or we could close Wrightstown?
Folks, we
But not
can't do
both.
that. I'm going to tell you this right now. You cannot close 2 elementary schools and take off 26 modulars and do it anywhere in the next 2 years. It's not meant for applause, and it's not meant for sensationalism. It's just not possible.
Right, so I
You
don't
can
think
model the
so
closing
either.
of one or
I don't
the
think that's what we
other.
were asking to model.
Well, no, that's not what I heard. I heard model one and sequentially talk about the other. I can't do that. I can't. Just
I don't
for the-
think you can.
All I can do is show you one or the other and try to figure out the modular piece. But I really can't do Wrightstown and then 3 years from now Rolling Hills and still try to figure out the modulars. It's just not possible. I can tell you it's not possible right now with the premise that we have an enrollment. If we were to model something at 10,200 kids, maybe it's possible, but that's too, in my opinion, that's not a worthwhile exercise for all the other important things you want to see us do. So if you want us to model one or the other elementary school, I'm happy to try to do that and try to play with a full redistricting of both of those. And I think the other thing you want us to do is talk about the modular piece and where everything would fit in if we did that. So that in and of itself will take us the majority of this month.
See, Kyle, to your point and to Bill's point, that's where my sense was, constraining him, Mark, to say, take off Wrightstown. Look, both were mentioned. Look at them both, to Bill's point. One will be better than the other. When you do an analysis, you run through the high-level things and you pick your best candidate and you go with it. That's what my charge to him would be, which was, these are the 2. Do your high-level analysis, pick the one that you think you're going to go with, and go deeper on that one, and that's going to be the proposal.
So when the proposal comes back that says we can't do it, we can't close Wrightstown, where do we go from there? Because that's the proposal that we got from the administration before. So if we have a repeat of that proposal, where do we go from there? We can't, then we're back to adding time to the timeline, saying, okay, well, how about if we look at Rolling Hills? What does it look like?
He's saying look at both.
I'm saying look at both, pick the one that will work best and go with it, even if it's
And
not perfect, go with
The
it.
exercise that the administration is going through, I believe, is one that, the recommendation that was made a few weeks ago that said it couldn't close, I disagreed with based on my study of the information. So the exercise that the administration is going through now, on specific to that, is going to either indicate that there is room or there isn't. Because until, you know, to me, the recommendation was made sort of, it didn't have enough detail for me to understand it. Because when I look at the information, I say, I don't know, I think that closing that school is possible. So going through the redistricting exercise and modeling what that would look like to actually close that school will be able to demonstrate to me and show me if it's possible. So that's what I'm hoping that exercise is going to achieve. If that doesn't work, I don't then say, let's go to a bigger school in a more crowded township and figure out if we could close that one. That doesn't make sense. So if it is established that Wrightstown cannot close, which I'm not convinced it is, that's what I want the proof of, the next step for me would be get the trailers off and redistrict this entire district to put the kids safely into buildings. It is not to try and figure out how you close a substantially bigger school.
So one of the key pieces of data is where the district boundaries are in the current enrollment. But another thing that I had wanted for us to understand what comes back to us, because we're going to get real numbers back as to how many kids we have and what the capacities of these schools are, and how we would have to use them in order to take a school offline. And to Mrs. Carroll's point earlier, you know, you do have some full-size classrooms that currently are used in ways that we've never used them before. That it is a part-time staff, and I've seen them walking through the schools, so I know that. But you don't have to walk through the schools to see it. You can just look at the Schrader report, and you can see that kind of usage occurring. So let's not just take the Schrader report 90% numbers and the way the classrooms are used, because they're used differently in the different schools. If we take a school offline, how will we have to use the space to make it work, and are we okay with that use of the space?
That's what we said.
Right.
Wrightstown or a school is gone tomorrow.
Right.
By whatever nature, we have to do it,
Right.
figure it out. What
So
does
what
it
I
mean?
never understood is what does it, I compared at the last meeting, Sulphine-Stone versus Newtown. They have different uses of their space. So what I don't understand is if we have an elementary school, what do we want there? What do we absolutely have to have versus nice to have? That's part of this.
So I don't know if we want to keep talking about this. We're about 10 after 8. One suggestion was that we rank the items that are on the Excel spreadsheet, and then I think the combination though is there's already some dates and some workaround. So you know, if one of the things that's due on 10/8 is not a priority, then we would want to tell the administration sooner rather than later. Is it reasonable for everybody to get their rankings back to me by Saturday? I will compile them. I will put back out to the whole board on Sunday.
I'm not even sure though that I could actually rank. Can I just say these are the priorities? Because
Well, if you rank them, if you do 1 to 27, then what I do is I put everybody's number in total and divide by averages, and you get that. So I'm a little math-brained. I'm not a writer, and so I was really, that was my error, because I was thinking that if you wanted to say everybody do a 1, 2, or 3 next to each one, and we can, I need some way that I can compile what you've said as a priority with what 8 other people have said. You do this more professionally than me, but
to
I don't think it's not to do any of them. I think it's just to say these are the things we need first. These are the things that are more important to us, so we can make decisions.
So is the ultimate goal to readjust the timeline on some items and remove some items?
That would be my thought. If we have an item on there that people rank lowly that's due the 8th, I would want to say to Mark on Monday morning, don't have your team spend time on this, move that, but this item, which wasn't going to be due to the 30th, can you bump it up?
There's only 2 things due on the 8th.
Yeah, and I think we want both of them.
Yes, I think you do too. So
Yeah, those
we're
aren't
gonna
gonna
do the
change.
best we can to get those things.
So
But-
when you say, when you're saying you want rank, you're,
I'm
because to
trying
me,
to-
rank or rate is two different words in my field of work. So
Well,
are you saying assess a prior, but not,
Pareto analysis.
okay. So you want,
I was gonna say, if there's, I didn't count them. Let's say there's 15
but you don't mean
things.
rank against another. You're saying
Prioritize.
each individually.
So this item is the first item I'd like done, this item's the second one, and from 1 to 15, you would do that. And if everybody did that, if everybody had the same one as their number one priority, that would rise to the top.
You want to force rank everything. Everybody
That's
will
a lot
have a
of
1,
work
everybody will
for
have a 15.
Why? I would just fill in the numbers from each
Because you're-
person and then average them.
Well,
Okay. Why?
that's not actually
It
the
feels-
best way to
It's
do that,
okay.
but, okay.
It feels,
Well,
it feels simpler to me, and you can do it however you'd like. If we had a priority 1, 2, and 3, and we put that beside each
That's
item,
fine.
and then we
That
know
works the
that
same way.
all the
That's
priority
fine.
ones we address first, priority 2s are, of course, second, and then 3s. If we end up with 5 items that are priority 3s that we all agree on, they're the last things we work on. Rather than trying to rank 15 different items, that sounds like a lot of work for
And
me.
I'll be honest,
And,
I don't know, I mean, the
rather put
idea
it
is,
1, 2,
I'm
or
gonna
3.
go back to, I don't know if we even need to do it. The 2 items that are due the 8th are things we want, and everything after that,
What I think has to happen is on the 8th, we have to get those answers and put a line in the sand and make a preliminary decision what we want to do based on those answers.
okay.
Because
why don't we
once
that?
you
Probably
do
that's
that,
right, yeah.
once you do that, the next round of things,
You're not gonna be able to do that, because you're gonna
well,
look
we
at
can
my-
do it. You may not like what you
No,
get, but we can
because
do
here's
it.
what's gonna happen, you're gonna look at my work and you're gonna have questions.
Yeah.
And I can hear it from this side already, and they're gonna be good questions. They're gonna be about allocation of space, utilization of space, so you're gonna look at my numbers and you're gonna say, okay, what if, and that's gonna be what this is gonna look like for the better part of a month. It's gonna be a what if exercise. We moved the boundaries here, here, and here. What if you moved them here? What if you moved them down this way, down this road? And that's gonna be what it's gonna look like for a period of time, maybe just a week until we get to the 16th. But there's no way I can build every permutation of this model and convince or show or do all the things that you wanna do. You're gonna have to see the initial work that we do and then give me a week to take the what ifs and work with that. That's my thought. You're gonna just not be able to see this in one final break.
And that's where I think, from my perspective, I think that we get into things where we start to work at a level. Schrader's report, very interesting. Maybe I'm more draconian. I haven't figured out if I'm draconian or Machiavellian, which is that my answer is when you look at the school, you say to the school, principal at that school, you've got 500 kids, this is their grade configuration, fit them in the building and respond to me by Thursday, how you're going to do it.
That's I want to be clear about what
Because
the
I don't
Schrader
care what the
report
buildings
is. That's
are.
exactly what, I mean, the Schrader report is work done from Mr. Schrader, Mr. Taylor, and building principals about the proper utilization of that building. It may not be perfect, but it's exactly about, tell me what fits here, tell me what fits there. So that's, I mean, you can, in any situation, you can say fit 1,200 kids at Goodnow, and we could figure out a way to do that. It would be ugly, but I mean, that's the kind of thing you can always fit more or less, and you're always going to fill in space, as people have said, when a room comes open to do something different in that building. So we want to try to utilize the buildings to the capacity that we think they are built for the kids that we have, without trying to use atypical space if we can help it.
I understand that, but so first pass out of the box, from my perspective, is tell them what they got, fit them in there, and that's, you know, we'll go back to art on a cart, we'll go back to music on a piano pushed around the halls, we'll go back to those things, because maybe that's what we have to do. You know, when, you know, some of these things that were said tonight, is it where I want to go? No, but the answer is you have to push it to stress it that way and then fall back, because there is.
Why is that where we have to go? I'm just curious about that. Why?
It isn't. I didn't say it's where we have to go. My question is.
That's okay.
My question is, push it to where you get things that you don't like. When you do a study, which is a dosage tolerance study, you wind up pushing until the person doesn't tolerate the dose well, and then you back away. That's sort of what we have to do, which is, if you look to optimize, how do you push to the point where you start to get some pain and then back away? Because otherwise there will always be excess capacity. Do I fully accept the notion that there's a psychologist in a 25-student classroom? I don't know.
You don't have that.
I don't think so. But
But we're not talking about drug trials, we're talking about kids, and we're talking about kids in places, and that's
And I'm
my
talking about doing it on
hesitation
paper.
about it.
I'm talking about doing it on paper
Okay.
before I start moving human beings around. But somehow I have to stress it and come back to validate to the board that we stressed it, this part didn't work, and we had to back up to this point where it wasn't stressed. Because I'm concerned that we go in and we are afraid to stress the loading of the schools, and that's where we get the excess capacity.
In most of your schools, you're stressed already.
I hear you. I just want to push, it's going to become more stressful when you take the trailers offline.
Yes.
That's the first pass.
Okay, so I think we're back to not ranking them. We're going to get the information that was due next week. We're going to digest the information we're going to get this week. But just to be clear, I think that the information that's due on the 8th, Mr. Klein, is going to be given to us on that Thursday probably. So, I just heads up, we need time to digest it. The dates are the same dates as our meetings, but we're meeting every week, so we'll continue to digest it.
But I mean, I have not carefully read any of the documents that came in late this afternoon.
No, I haven't either.
So it is, relative to feedback to those documents, are you funneling it, or it all goes directly to Mark, or?
No, they came from Mr. Klein. I would say if you have feedback, you should email Mr. Klein directly. The only thing that you can email me, if there's a point at which you feel, you should tell Mr. Klein, just be easier that way. If you think there's a change or a clarification that needs to be made, if that makes, and then you're comfortable, so that at some point he can say to me that people on the board are comfortable with posting it, I think at some point we want at least some of that information posted. So when you give him your feedback on the information from today, if you could also tell him your comfort level with posting, that would be great. Because he'll be the one that posts it, not me. Other things for this evening on this topic? Anybody else want to speak on anything on capital planning before we move on? Dr. Foster? No? Okay, so at this point, we are going to have a meeting next week. It begins at 7:30. It will be held at Council Rock South, I believe, in the auditorium. We will start with probably a presentation from Mr. Klein about some of the modeling that's being done. We did want to consider the fact that he may want to put Decision Insight up on the board and some things, and some of that may be challenging, but I guess we'll try to make it work at South. The 16th, we're back here, so if for some reason there's any issues with that, it's just a big auditorium, and we'll see. So that is the plan. We will continue this conversation at that point. Council will be there. Kapua will be there. It'll be a regular public board meeting. We won't have another agenda item. This will be our only yes, we're televised.
No, televised live.
And this will be the only topic on our agenda.
Did I hear it is going to be recorded also? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Televised and recorded.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns? Okay. It is 9:26 and we are moving on to our agenda. Mr. Grupp, if you could take item number 1.
No.
I move to approve the retainer agreement with Mr. Fred D'Angelo as contained in the attachment to
sorry.
this agenda, subject to audit.
Second.
Thank you.
The agreement has been revised and has been approved by our council and has been agreed to on all terms by Mr. D'Angelo.
I just want to have a brief commentary. It's not surprising me, I'm not going to vote for this because that's not what I wanted to do. However, having said that, I appreciate the effort that went into recrafting it and making the change in the way the process worked. So last time we met, there were a number of concerns the board had. Those concerns have been remediated. The points have been clarified, travel concern, and I appreciate the effort Mr. D'Angelo put into it. I call it out for this purpose, which was there was never a question that I was not going to vote for this. There was never a question that I was never going to vote for this. It was never in question. But I think that what you saw me do and what you see this board do uniformly and is that even when we don't want the thing that's going on or we don't agree with the thing that's going on, I appreciate that this board has always taken the tact of whatever we're doing, we want to do it the best way possible. So while I may not agree with this, I am very happy that the process, that the contract has been revised to something which is more tenable.
Any other comments?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Freilich.
Regarding the billing matters. I just want to be clear, when it reads, we bill in quarter-hour increments. So if I'm understanding that, I guess, Mr. Reed, if I call Mr. D'Angelo and we spend 16 minutes on the phone, he's billing us for half an hour?
I really can't answer for Mr. D'Angelo, but that this language would justify that, yes?
So if you call him, talk for half an hour.
Or 14 minutes.
Or 14 minutes, I understand. The, is that a bit excessive in your opinion, the 15-minute increments?
No.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Abramson?
Yeah, last time I expressed a concern about the administration charges, the administrative charges. And all I can say is to the board, if you want to look at the last sentence of paragraph 2 and compare it to the fourth paragraph,
Top of page 2 where it includes overhead occurs.
Yeah, so if you just, the second sentence, the first sentence and the second sentence, that's all I'm going to say about it.
Compare the last sentence in paragraph 2 to what?
To the first and second sentences on paragraph 3. And that's all, I'm not going to say anything more publicly about it, that's it.
What he's pointing out is that at one point the thing says there's no administrative charges. At the top of page 2 it says, and there'll be a certain adjustment for administrative charges.
Yes. Other comments or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Grubb,
Abstain.
Mrs. McKessie,
Yes.
Mrs. Sexton,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Abramson,
No.
Mrs. Brooks,
Yes.
Mr. Bialik,
No.
Okay.
This
Moving
is
on.
not- This is not an item that requires supermajority, is it, Derek?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, Mrs. McKessie, can you take item number 2, all of it, if you can? Thank you.
I move to approve change order number GC001 to Custom Surface Company Incorporated for bid package number 1, asphalt repairs and seal coating, CRSD bid 14-15 in the additive amount of $10,000 subject to audit. I move to approve change order number GC001 to Continental Flooring Company for bid package number 2, floor finish replacement / corridor renovation, CRSD bid 14 through 19 in the credit amount of $9,172. I move to approve change order number GC001 to Walter Brucker and Company Incorporated for bid package number 2, floor finish replacement corridor renovations, CRSD bid 14-1718 in the credit amount of $4,891. I move to approve change order number GC001 to TE Construction Services LLC for bid package number 2, floor finish replacement, corridor renovation, CRSD bid 1416 in the credit amount of $9,414.80. I move to approve change order number GC001 to Old Philadelphia Associates Incorporated for bid package number 3, Council Rock High School North concrete canopies, CRSD bid 14-12 in the credit amount of $1,710. I move to approve change order number 01 to Garland DBS Incorporated for Council Rock High School North roof replacement in the credit amount of $26,660.
Second.
Mr. Taylor?
Well done.
Yes. This is for the majority of the summer projects that we have wrapped up in August. There are still a couple projects that The final numbers are being tallied, and I'll bring back to you at a future board meeting. But in general, we did very well. We were able to save, maintain most of that allowance we had in the project for units of things that could have been bigger or more of during construction. So we did very well this summer.
Great.
So the total of all change orders, we're getting back how much?
We're getting back a total of $41,847.80.
Thanks, Doug.
Comments? Hearing no objection, I ask that the motion be recorded as passing by unanimous consent. Item number 3, Mr. Abramson, please.
I move to award the professional services agreement for geotechnical investigations to David Blackmore and Associates at a total cost not to exceed $26,560 for the proposed Newtown Middle School, subject to audit.
Second.
With my apologies, we were going to pull number 3. We got solicitor changes late today. We haven't a chance to look them over and get them all together. So I apologize, Mr. Abramson. I should have caught that ahead of time. But we pulled those pieces at the very last minute. We'd rather have them on the 16th after we've had a chance to get all those changes together and give them back to you.
Then I'll move to table.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any objection? Passes. To table the motion. So let's take item number 4, Dr. Foster.
So is that still on?
Item number
So-
3 is on the table, will be
Right.
discussed next.
We'll have it on the 16th
Formal
for
meeting
you.
on the 16th.
But we do want 4 to go forward.
Please.
Okay. I move to approve the amendment to the agreement between Council Rock School District and Breslin, Ridyard, Federo Architects for the supplemental land survey services for the proposed Newtown Middle School project at a total cost not to exceed $4,250, subject to audit.
Second.
Mr. Taylor, some explanation on this?
Yes, part of the initial survey requires some submissions to some local agencies, and one of those is the PINDI. It's a Pennsylvania National Diversity Inventory, which gives us feedback relative to any types of endangered species, any types of wildlife that could be present in this territory that could present issues during construction or prior to a project. It's something that's required on any project. So it came back as a hit, meaning there could be something on the site, there may not be. Generally, it's not an issue that prohibits any kind of construction. However, what you want to do when you do have a hit is make sure that, in addition, if there are wetlands or any kind of, if there's cattails or something growing anywhere on a site, generally it's an indication that there's wetlands. So we need to delineate that area of wetlands. That will also assist us in identifying when we're looking for any of those hits in the PINDI search, if there's any kind of turtles, if there's spotted owls, there's things that could be on the site that will be investigated further as part of this project if we move forward. But the wetland delineation itself is something that the people that are actually performing the work right now will locate those wetlands, they'll document those on the existing conditions, site survey, and they'll provide the necessary setbacks of where those are so that it tells us how it would impact the construction area as well, where the new construction could be. Because if there were wetlands in the middle of where you wanted to place a building, you'd have an option of either relocating those wetlands or avoiding those. So it's something that, while we're doing the work, is recommended.
Why wasn't this part of the original proposal?
There's, as I mentioned when we had this Phase 1 work approved last month, there are going to be some items that aren't part of that original proposal. The wetland delineation is one. If they hadn't had concern, if PINDI wouldn't have come back with a hit, and we didn't think that there was any potential wetlands, we wouldn't be performing this work, and it would have been something that was asked for that may not have been necessary. In addition to this, should this project move forward, there are a couple other things that I would bring back to you for further discussion. And those are 3 other things: a Phase 1 environmental study, knowing what we know about the site, knowing that this site in the past had some potential groundwater issues. We'd want to do a Phase 1 study, which would tell us if we have any issues on the site that we should further investigate beyond researching what could have happened there. There's the response to the PINDI, which, since we've had the hit, we want to get further work on that. And then potentially an electromagnetic utility location study. All of those things combined are not major numbers. It might be, $15,000 to $20,000 on a major project. It's a big number in itself, but in the overall budget, it's not. And certainly it's not a big number. The electromagnetic study will assist us in identifying some of the site utilities that might live out there that we don't see with our own eyes. So they'll actually come out and they'll do a scan of the site to determine where there might be things underground that we just don't know about. It's an old site. There's a lot of things that have been run across that site over the years. One unidentified utility during construction that could be encountered would cost us far more than doing that study in itself. It's not something I'm bringing now because it doesn't make sense to perform it if we don't approve the project and move forward. But all I'm asking for tonight is for the wetland delineations portion of this.
So this hit on the wetlands, where was it?
It's just geographically the territory and the zone that we're in. It identified that there is a potential species that we should look out for. They won't tell you more than that. You have to move into the next piece of it, and then you'll find out what that species is. It could be a bog turtle, it could be an owl, it could be...
Because, I mean, the site is all occupied except for the tree borders. It's
right.
mowed grass,
so there could be
it's
things
fields,
living in, Tyler State Park that...
Right.
Sometimes walk over our way.
They probably visit once in a while.
There's an owl that lives
We'll
over
chase
the
them
chimney.
home.
There's definitely groundhogs on the site.
Any other questions, comments?
Is there any reimbursement for this, plan con or otherwise?
Not for this portion.
Other questions or comments?
No, but the new members should get used to the idea that you get a step forward, and then you wait, and then maybe you get a ticket to go to the next step. And if all goes well, it won't cost you a fortune, and you can move forward. But you go nowhere without the ticket.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but I struggle with the idea that we have this hit, and we can't find out what the details of the hit are, but we're expected to pay for the study of that hit. So
It's like telling you might have a problem, and now they have to do the research and spend more money to find out what the real problem is. Well,
Right, but you still need the wetland delineation to determine if there are wetlands and how it would impact your, right, the habitat, and also how it would impact your potential building site.
All right.
Mr. Graff?
No, it's
Okay,
just,
roll call vote, please.
Let's see. Mrs. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Bielek?
Can you come back to me?
Dr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Grubb?
yeah.
Okay.
Mrs. McKessie?
Yes.
Mrs. Sexton?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Abramson?
Yes.
Mr. Bielek?
Yes.
Mr. Graff, item number 5. Is that one okay?
Yeah, that one I can
Okay,
agree with.
thank you.
It wasn't my fault, you picked the wrong one before. I move to approve the transfer and conveyance agreement for 4 modular classrooms as identified in the agreement to City of Philadelphia Police Department in the amount of $1, subject to audit.
Second.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes, so in 2006 or so, we had sold a couple modular classrooms to Ben Salem Township. Recently, I was contacted by Ben Salem Township, who was teaming with the City of Philadelphia Police Department. They were looking for some office space to replace some of theirs. It is actually so bad it was condemned. So Ben Salem brought the police department out to Newtown Middle School. We looked at some of the units, including one of those that's been recently closed, shut down, that we're not using. So we have 4 units that we could, right at this time, remove from the site without affecting some of the other power and canopies and things that would otherwise make things more difficult to remove out of sequence, if you would. So we have 4 that we can freely remove. They would basically pay for all costs associated with the removal of those trailers from the site. There'd be no cost other than maybe some site restoration by us once they're out of here. I think that it's advisable that we consider getting rid of these 4 modulars. Now, we say for $1, you're saying, well, couldn't we have gotten more money for these? We, in the past, have advertised these on PennLink to try to sell those when we were removing them from some of the construction sites without any interest at all. At the same time, if we were to demolish these, we were looking at getting some proposals to demolish a couple units. It's between $7,000 and $10,000 for someone to come in and actually take the units away. One of the units is in need of a new roof. There's deferred maintenance costs that we're avoiding by getting rid of these. So there certainly are major savings to us by selling these for $1.
Nobody's going to argue with you for the price.
No.
Who drew up the agreement?
This agreement was prepared by Eastburn and Gray, and this was recently reviewed by them again. Now, Jerry...
What time will this be done? When will this work be done?
They're looking to remove these by the end of October.
There's no statement on here regarding Act 34 clearances for the persons who might be on the school property during the progress of school days. Is that because they're not going to be doing it while school's in session, or because we didn't put it in the contract?
What's likely this won't happen while we do have cars and staff here, but we can certainly add something, Jerry, relative to clearances. I don't have a problem with
Well,
that.
shouldn't they have had that already? And the other question is, so I'm trying to find the section about the condition upon which they leave the property after their remediation. I guess it's in section 1, that they'll be removing and disposing of certain things, but there's no commentary about anything about how they would leave that. Would they leave it flat, whether they would leave it unpaved, whether they would leave, there's no description there. I'm not trying to gild the lily, but I would just like to know that when they pull it out, I don't have pipes sticking up out of the ground that create a hazard in and of themselves. There's nothing there that says they won't.
Right. Well, we've spoke to them about access to the trailers, how they've removed the trailers. Certainly, we're going to be there when this happens. There are some trees that have to be removed to get those out. Believe it or not, when those were placed, we planted some very little trees around them. When they were placed, those trees are now fairly sizable trees that need a chainsaw to cut them down just to get the trailers out. We're going to be there. We're going to take those trees down as necessary. As I said, we're going to restore. Yeah, and we're going to restore the site after they're pulled out from where they're resting. One is in a paved area already. There's very little disturbance to the site. It's pulling it out of a courtyard.
So Doug, I guess my question really comes down to that this contract doesn't talk to that they're going to remediate the size. I'm not talking about drips or drabs or oil or anything. That they're just, it doesn't talk about how they're going to do that. So we are going to take that on as our responsibility once they pull out what they're doing?
Yes.
That's our responsibility?
Yes.
And we're accepting of that. Okay, so long as we know that going in.
We do.
When do they accept ownership and take over any liability from the move or anything that happens on? My concern is they load up onto their vehicle and then something happens on the property.
I think the agreement calls for them to carry a certain amount
Section 3.
of insurance. With respect to their operation, it also requires them to use competent workmen in the removal process.
They actually had a moving company with them when they came out to look at it, who preliminarily took a look at what they would have to do to pull them out of here.
Yeah, I'm sure they're doing it by subcontract.
Same company that they used when they took them for Ben Salem.
So maybe it doesn't have to be in the contract, just but for my information, does it, when do they assume ownership and liability?
When they take possession of the property.
And is that when they're on site or when it's on their vehicle?
When it's, I would say when it's removed from our property, so when it leaves our property.
We'll obviously execute this with them prior to them starting any work. The other part of this that has to be, you'll see that there's blanks on here relative to identifying which modulars they are. We're going to put the serial numbers of those modulars on here before we execute the contract. We're having a challenging time finding those serial numbers on the units, but today we made progress and did find all of the serial numbers. We had to remove skirting from the units to get under them, and then we have a lot of corrosion on the steel where the serial numbers were, but we did finally find those. So we will finalize this before we'd execute it.
Well, understanding that this is a great deal for us and we should do anything we can to facilitate it. My concern is in the movement of these older buildings, if suddenly it comes off of the truck and hits one of our buildings and they can just say, well, we don't want that one, and who's responsible for the repair? Maybe I'm digging into it a little bit, but I just would like to see.
Well, in that specific instance, if it was their fault that caused the damage, they would be responsible for it. And as I said, they are required to carry insurance for general liability. liability in the amount of $1 million per occurrence and $2 million in the aggregate, and to name the district as additional insured.
An interesting question on that, Derek, just because, is the City of Philadelphia Police Department, do they have immunity? Remember the whole, that there was a cap on?
It's a moving company, it's a contractor.
No, it's the City of Philadelphia is the.
CPPD.
Oh, with the insurance, right.
So my question is, that if you wanted to sue them, are you limited by the $500,000 cap that was recently issued for another school district on their liability for transportation?
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I don't know whether that same cap applies to a police
I find it hard
department.
for them to do $2 million damage, but it is interesting to
Yeah.
see this and understand that
I
in
would
that
find it
context.
very difficult for them to do $2 million worth of damage.
Doug, you expressed one of my concerns that about the identification being blank in the agreement, because the motion does refer to the classrooms as identified in the agreement. So I guess, Dirk, with that,
I'll modify my motion subject to the identification of the specific units.
Who seconded? Mr. Biley, is that acceptable?
Yes.
and Doug, you probably will predict my next question. Are each of these modular units unused and unnecessary for the Council Rock School District?
Yes, they are.
Okay, are we ready to vote? Please, roll call vote.
Mr. Grupp,
Yes.
Ms. McKessie,
Yes.
Mrs. Sexton,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Abramson,
Yes.
Mrs. Brooks,
Yes.
Mr. Bialik,
Yes.
Dr. Foster.
Yes.
Moving on to item number 6, Mrs. Sexton.
Pictures.
Oh, okay. I move to approve the purchase of 30 laptop computers and 2 charging carts by the Goodnow Elementary Parent Organization for the use by students at a total cost of $23,169.52, subject to audit.
Second.
And thank you very much.
Yep, simply want to thank the Goodnow PTO for their continued work, as do all the PTOs in our school district, but this is particularly helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously it's fantastic, but I wanted to ask just a technical question. It doesn't matter that it's this donation, it could be any, but when you look at the list of components on there, I mean, we've all bought laptops before, and they come with bloatware, they come with all kinds of stuff. These are from Dell, so when PTOs make these very generous, wonderful donations and these laptops arrive, are they all junked up, or?
No, sir.
Okay.
They're actually purchasing off of our bid that we did this summer.
Okay, so that's fantastic. And then when you look down on the components, there's, like it'll say there's no resource DVD, et cetera, but it lists fingerprint reader, palm rest. Anyway, or maybe they just come that way now. I don't have a fingerprint reader.
We didn't spec that into the laptop, it just comes with it.
I'm just curious, what does the addition of these 30 computers do to the total number of computers in that school? What
It just gives them 2 additional laptop cards. They have
No,
2
no,
now.
They have 2 now, and so this is doubling the number of computers?
That's correct.
Wow.
23.
Really more a commentary on how few computers are there, but thank you, Goodnow PTO.
Okay, I'm going to ask that, hearing no objection, I'm going to ask, oh, sorry.
Yes.
Are you good? Yes? Okay. Hearing no objection, thankfully, we passed this motion as a donation from the PTO. Please record the motion as passing by unanimous consent. Item number 7, Mr. Bialik.
I move to award Category 1 Cisco 3750X network switches to E-Plus Technologies at a cost not to exceed $204,869.12, subject to audit. I move to award Category 2 Cisco 4500X network switches to Insight Public Sector at a cost not to exceed $33,426, subject to audit. I move to award Category 4 Cisco
B6KE switch to E-Plus Technologies at a cost not to exceed $56,341, subject to audit. I move to award Category 5 Alien Vault SIEM to Ask Technologies at a cost not to exceed $34,680, subject to audit. And I move to reject Category 3 Cisco 6800 Network Switch.
Second.
Questions for Mr. Frederickson?
Matt, earlier tonight you heard some discussion about whether we certainly understand that there's some sentiment among the board to potentially move the NOC. All of this equipment will work and is useful even if you were to move the network operating center to north or to another building?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Frederickson, how much room do you think it would take up? How many classrooms would you just ballpark it?
I'm sorry, for
If you were to move
the data center?
I've seen the room.
Yeah, we don't need as much space as we currently have.
Okay.
Mr. Taylor and I have been doing a lot of estimations. We need approximately 4,000 to 4,500 square feet to accommodate the data center and the staff.
But let us be open on something, which is the staff doesn't necessarily need to be proximal to the location of the data center, all of the staff. Your staff, the data center, we run lights out data centers these days. All of your staff doesn't need to be there. They need, how much office space and how much conditioned space for the servers are two different questions. Have I lost you yet?
No, that's
Okay.
I mean, we do have an area identified for staff, and we would have an area identified for the data center.
Right.
Is that exactly how much space I need for a data center? I'd feel more comfortable once Mr. Taylor's architect has sketched it out, because I kind of know, but I'd be more comfortable with a professional.
And building on Mrs. Sexton's question, as you build that out, please think of it as we talk about reusing and optimizing where students go, talking also we're optimizing where staff goes. And sometimes staff wouldn't be at the data center. You might only have 2 or 3 people who work there, others working elsewhere because the other people, you know, my data center's in Chicago. My office is in King of Prussia. So more and more, we don't need to have the people with the computers at the data center. True?
That's true. The technicians do service the buildings, but I do believe that they do need to have some place that they can sit to make phone calls and to do support.
Agreed, but they don't necessarily need to be in the building where the data center is.
No.
That was my point, that because we may not find 4,000 square feet as one unit. We may find it as 1,000 square feet suitable for racks and 3,000 square feet elsewhere suitable for people. Okay, just want to make sure we know that going forward.
Any other questions on this
Yes,
motion?
Yeah, one
Mr.
second.
Abramson?
1 second, give me a second.
He wants to know why you got the 4,500X, not the 4,501X.
Exactly. I just saw this. On the summary of bids, for the Insight Public Sector, it says number of items awarded, 0. That should be 1.
Yes, sir.
That change the number?
No. And not that I know what Category 3 Cisco 6800 network switches are, but is that something that's going to be rebid or?
I'll have to purchase that in the future. The price that came in was a little over $200,000, and I just simply couldn't afford it at this time.
But we don't need it at this time either?
Keeping my fingers crossed.
Need, want, very. Other comments, questions? Are you okay?
No,
Okay. Hearing no objection, I ask that the secretary record the motion as passing by unanimous consent. Moving on in our agenda is board topics. We did already discuss the capital planning topic, but I have another one that I need discussed just briefly. I really need to know if you have an appetite to discuss it. I put at each of your seats a copy of the letter which Mr. Klein had put out earlier from the Borough of Morrisville, asking about our interest in a dialogue of merging. And the reason I need some, I'm putting this out publicly to say, is there any comments or discussion around it, is because I've been contacted by, I think it was by I don't know, if somebody from the district, I apologize at this point, I don't know who it was, in addition to this letter, and now I've been approached by the press as well to know, did we get it, and what do we think of it? And I certainly can respond with what I think, but since it was asked of the whole board, I need some sense of what this board, I think we have to reply in some way. They sent a letter, they followed up, they're looking for some kind of response.
So I think it's really, really sad that the level of state funding for districts is at such a point that a school district goes begging other districts to take its children. I don't blame them for doing it. They're trying to do the best they can with what they have. I don't think that we can participate in that, but at the IU on Tuesday night, Denise and I went to that conference, that podcast on full and fair funding for schools, and it was very, very interesting. And Morrisville particularly was mentioned as a situation that is just terrible. It's just too small of a community to front a school. And it, you know, we have, is it 499 or 498, 498 or 504 school districts in Pennsylvania?
Oh, 504.
You know, I think it was, there was always a number like
It was
that.
501, yes.
501. So it is that we're cut up into these little communities, and education is so expensive, requiring so many, the ability to handle so many different areas, that it just doesn't work for a school district to be that small. But I don't know. I know we can't or should not do that right now, but that's a state issue. That if there's a reason for the Department of Education to exist, it might be to help situations like that. And they talked at this conference about full funding for schools, and again mentioned that, you know, we're 46th or 43rd
46th.
in
Well,
state.
43rd, they showed data from 2010.
10.
So it said 43rd, but
But
we
it
are
could
46th.
be 46th in the amount of state funding for public education, money from the state.
As a percentage.
In 1970s, schools were funded at 54%. The state picked up 54% of the cost. And if that were the case for Morrisville, maybe they could afford themselves. But since they don't have that resource from the state anymore, they can't. So it's a shame. They could end up as a large charter, which would be a sad situation. Because if they can't get a public school to buy them, the next logical choice would be to look for a charter to buy them.
But to answer your question for direction, as we have just spent 2 hours tonight and many hours over the last months, we're having issues on how to accommodate our own students. And I don't think that this is the right time for us to entertain a merger with another school district that would add an influx to our district at this time.
I mean, they're not contiguous with us. We're just not the right school district.
Well, the state law has changed.
Said
No,
it's changed.
that's fine, but that's just a weird arrangement. It really should be a school district nearby. I don't get it.
Just for clarity, I thought all of those things, and I thought they were rather obvious, and so I figured they had just sent this out to maybe everybody in Bucks County, and, you know.
Well, it wasn't everybody in Bucks County, but it was because the law used to be that it had to be contiguous, and
they
now it
don't.
no longer is.
Right.
And I think they sent it to 6 or 7 districts. I know that they've had conversations with Pennsbury in the past.
I do too.
So, but they also resent a letter to Pennsbury. So,
For me, it's not a workable.
Okay.
It's not a workable thing, given our current environment and our current actions that we're considering. It's not
Okay, so I'm going to write a letter unless anybody feels differently that says, you know, at this time, we don't think a merger is feasible for us to pursue, and that we, you know,
It was discussed by your board and there was no action.
whatever. And they signed it from their superintendent and board president, so we'll probably sign it that way unless anybody has any objections or concerns. Okay. All right, it's gathering some steam, and you guys heard about it, and press called my house and asked me about it, and I didn't respond, and I'm sorry, but that's why I didn't respond. So I wanted to make sure we as a group had an opportunity to talk about it. Okay.
Under the board topics.
Yes, Mr. Graff.
We spoke the other week, and people here reminded me of it as we began our discussions this evening. We talked about the Bus for Achieve. And at the time we talked about the Bus for Achieve, we agreed to go ahead and buy the 1 7-passenger van, and we talked about there would be needs for additional vans. What are you smiling at? And actually, the payback, when we looked at those numbers, was sub 3 years on each of them. You know, collectively, each would pay back in less than 3 years. When will that be coming back before the board to purchase those 2 additional vans?
Dr. Lambert? Dr. Lambert, do you have any comments?
I do, or don't I?
Yes, you do. Please make them.
We have had discussions. Jack was in the process of gathering certain pieces of data in terms of looking at the students, looking what our trips are, and looking what would be the best option to put before you. I think with the beginning of school started, he kind of got sidetrailed from that, but it will be coming back to you.
When?
How about buying?
We can't tell.
How about
What's your?
January? How about
Yeah,
December?
by
or
January.
something?
Yes, I would think, yeah, definitely by January.
That would be good,
Okay.
thank you.
Bye, Jen. Others, comments or board topics this evening?
No, but I am interested, Dr. Lambert, when would you be able to bring together the gifted parents again and talk to them? Because there was quite a fa-la-la-la-la going on.
Well, we invited.
Not just here, at back to school night, so.
I would have to check my calendar. We invited parents to a meeting at the end of the school year last year. I'm happy to invite any parents back. I have never been shied away from meeting with anybody.
No, you're not, so.
Anybody wants to meet with me, give me a call. I'll be happy to meet with them, discuss any pieces of that.
But would
we
you
can
consider-
certainly bring folks back. We just did it in May, I think, last year.
Maybe meeting with the parents at Rolling Hills?
I thought it was Hillcrest.
I think you mean
Hillcrest? I'm sorry.
We have some conversations going about that now, yes.
All right.
Other board comments? Okay, moving on to committee reports. We had a academic standards meeting tonight.
We had a really good meeting tonight where we discussed high school courses that have been coupled, and the shuttle courses, which was a handout, which will be online, yes. We also talked about some changes and additions to courses for next year, and at the I guess it's the November 6th board meeting, what will be coming to us is the addition of 3 new courses for next year. One is AP Accounting.
Really?
Yes, a great addition, I
That's
think.
fabulous.
Actually, all 3 fantastic additions to our curriculum. One is accelerated calculus, which I think is a terrific thing because currently the only option for calculus at this point is AP. And so, and I had said tonight at the meeting, for a lot of parents who are making program planning decisions in 6th grade and setting a track that will take them right through the high school, at this point, really the only clear way to get to calculus is on an honors track. So having accelerated calculus, I think, is a fabulous thing. And another thing that's really terrific is the addition of Honors Latin 4. Because to date, we've only offered 3 years of Latin, which is a problem for students who want to have a language all 4 years of high school. So I personally am really, really pleased with the addition of these 3 courses. There will be information from the meeting online that you can review, but if anyone on the board has any specific questions about these things, you can contact me, talk to Joy and Barry. The other part of the meeting tonight was a discussion about high school grades, which was a really great and productive conversation about how grades are calculated, the use of the Home Access Center, how individual marking periods differ from final grades. And so the net of that is that the high school administration is going to continue to just monitor these things, and it's an ongoing dialogue, but there's been a lot of really great progress in that area. And so thanks to everybody. It was a really, really good meeting tonight.
Denise, did you talk about the plus or minuses?
Oh, yeah, sorry, we did, yes. And that's part of the ongoing conversation, basically. Pluses and minuses in the past had been...
Just so we can let the
Yeah.
community know, we're talking about grades with, for example, a B plus or an A minus being
Right.
used to
Right.
recalculate the GPA.
the great thing now is that there's uniformity across both high schools in terms of the use of pluses and minuses, which was not the case before. There is uniformity now in terms of rounding is consistent. So that's been, for someone like me who's been attending academic standards meetings for nearly 2 decades, and hearing certain issues that were always a problem. I mean, there's been tremendous movement and resolution thanks to technology, and but it's a work in progress. We still have a little ways to go, but it's been very good progress, and I'm happy that the conversation is going to continue.
Great. Facilities, I don't think has met because that's all we talk about anymore. No.
Right.
Any other comments?
I guess I should probably just reiterate the upcoming dates, although I know they've already been discussed. There will be a special meeting of the board at Council Rock High School South Auditorium at 7:30 for public comment and input regarding capital planning, and a special meeting of the board on Thursday, October 23rd at Newtown Middle School in their auditorium, also at 7:30, and then a facilities and finance combined meeting on Thursday, October 30th.
MBIT?
I think we reported out MBIT at a prior meeting.
I think you did.
Yeah,
Nothing else other than you had a great representative here tonight?
that's correct, we did.
IU, Mrs. Sexton, you talked about.
We met, and one of the things that they talked about is that this plan to bring together, they had on this podcast 850, God bless you, people from all over the state of Pennsylvania. Superintendents, IU directors, school district principals, board members from all over. Our group was about 15 people, but throughout the whole of Pennsylvania, 850 people
Yeah, it was
came
25
out.
locations.
Yeah, came out to participate. It was very interesting hearing from people all over the state. Now, the underpinnings of this were paid for by the William Penn Foundation. And that always sounds good, but my experience of it is that when they talk about full and fair funding, they might not mean us. And so, I don't know. It's yet to be seen. So we've participated in as much as to give in our names, sign ourselves up for information, and if they can provide us with enough resources back to feel comfortable, we'll continue to participate with this group to see where it's going. They're hoping to start a sort of a spring. They want to have big rallies in Harrisburg. I said they've never been received very well before. Now a whole bunch of old administrators go, a whole bunch of old board members go. We all hang out on the steps. I don't know how that's going to be taken by the general public, but that may be what's going to happen. We'll see.
Okay. I'd like to move on to public comment. Public comment's an opportunity for members of the public to address the board. We would ask that you limit your comments to no longer than 3 minutes. Please consider the fact that there may be young children watching the broadcast on CRTV. It is our goal to maintain a respectful environment so that members of our communities have an equal opportunity to address the board. While the board welcomes your ideas and will consider them in deliberating an issue, we may not respond to your comments or questions. If you'd like to speak, please approach the mic, state your name and your town. Thank you.
I'm actually going to say it this time. Jenny Schottmiller from Wrightstown. Just wanted to comment on a couple of things. One is that if all I cared about was saving Wrightstown Elementary, I would have sort of stopped coming and stopped talking when I felt like there really wasn't a lot of support for doing that. What happened, though, is I was coming to these meetings, and over I heard Dr. Foster say about how sections break, and I heard Ms. Sexton say how we need to be more efficient, and we can be more efficient. And I heard other ideas that really piqued my interest. And I may not be an educator, but I was a CPA for a long time, and part of me will always be one. And when I sat down, I didn't even know 5th and 6th grade centers was a thing, you know? I sat down and I said, what happens if you do a kindergarten center? What happens if you move 6th grade around? You know, I'm a parent, and I'm an accountant, and I just did things. and it works. So the only reason I even brought it to your attention or did the work that I did was because I think it might work. And I don't have any burning desire for my kids to go to like 5th and 6th grade centers. That didn't come up. If you don't do it, oh well. I think from looking at all the numbers that you have, even if the Schrader report's wrong, you're going to have a problem taking all trailers offline. And I'm offering a solution to consider that will help with that, as well as save you money, as well as increase your efficiencies. I think it deserves a look. I think it deserves talking to some people who live it and have come up with some innovative ways to implement it that seems to, like it might be really good for kids. I wanted to point out that you do have a recommendation that says you can't close elementary schools unless you expand other elementary schools. Recommendation 1 says that. So it would be dependent, if you're looking at that, on you can't close a school until you expand another school. And yeah, only one recommendation said that, but only one recommendation said close Wrightstown now also. So that should be something that can be considered. I think you could vote now to remove trailers. But when you start to realize if you really do have a problem and they can't call them offline, I think you really need to look at 5th and 6th grade centers. I don't think it's an either or decision. It's not either 5th grade centers or close a school. I think the reason to not close a school right now is you don't have capacity to close a school. You don't have any room where those kids are going to fit nicely. You can put kids in storage closets. You're doing it now. I think if we asked you all to work in a storage closet, you'd probably say it doesn't really feel appropriate. Not that they're in there all day, but for small group instruction, we're using those spaces. Mr. Schrader stood up and said it's not really appropriate. Those kids should be moved out. I think in addition to closing trailers, you should be moving kids out of those atypical spaces as well. But down the line, if enrollment does go down, there's no reason to keep a building you don't need. I'm not saying it. I've told many people, if I had looked at those recommendations and looked at the enrollment numbers and said, looks like they can't keep Wrightstown open because enrollment's declined too much, I wouldn't have been coming here making any points at all. I would have just expected you to close it. I earlier handed out a bunch of handouts. I only talked to one of them. The other information I gave you is stuff that was just helpful to me to wrap my head around the Schrader report and the numbers, as well as the balancing of the north and south. If all the north goes to north and all the south goes to south, you got 45% of your kids in the north, 45% of your kids in the south, across all levels. Just nice and even. Over time, it pretty much stays that way. But your capacity, it's like all over the map. So if you just look at the last page I handed out some point when you have time, you'll see your capacity is wonky. And if you fix that, you might not be pulling your hair so much about trying to fit kids in and capacity here and not enough capacity here if it's balanced to your population. That's it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Amy from Newtown on behalf of Wrightstown Elementary. When I first wrote that petition and made that Facebook page, I was like, we're going to have to spin this. How am I going to, alternative resources, revenues, and solar. And, I'm not a CPA. I'm a mom to 2 little kids. But I'm good at Facebook, and I'm good at finding people, and I found Jenny, and she's good at what she does, and that's what I was hoping was going to happen. And after meeting her and reviewing all the reports alongside of her and coming to these meetings, I now know that it is inappropriate to close Wrightstown. We have a classroom shortage. That is the fact. If we close a school, we're going to have more classroom shortage. So I'm really glad that I did get involved in this process to know with real confidence that closing Wrightstown is not the right thing to do for the district. And I want you to know that I hear that you want community input, and to the neglect of my marriage and my young children, I am working on that tirelessly for you. I do it day in and day out to get people in this community aware of what's going on and informed of what's being discussed here at these board meetings. And I am trying my darndest to get more and new people to come to your meetings so that you can hear from them how they feel. And my real focus is to get people to come to that meeting at South next week. So I'm trying to do that for you, and I'm trying to get people to hear what you're talking about. I want to say that administration is not the only people who can do these models for you. find a friend who is a CPA, who has a financial background and a passion for academic standards and excellence, and they can model this for you. She didn't have access to anything crazy. She just did a little diligence and is smart and found time that she doesn't have. She has 6 kids and a job in Philly, and she did this. So administration is not the only people who can model this stuff. And there was a comment that kind of really upset me, and not only is it just wrong, the emotion behind it, that we're doing this whole inviting people to these meetings because of a legal requirement. The legal requirement starts after November 6th. But you're getting some great input from the community during this process. And if you're viewing it as just a requirement, that's a real shame, because Jenny really presented something here that's an answer to many of the things that you all have brought up. And to view us, spending time listening to our nonsense as a requirement is a real shame, because I think I've heard great stuff from people not from Wrightstown, from the Achieve program, from Jenny, and from a lot of people. So to just kind of brush it off is really disappointing. And I think that's, and closing Wrightstown isn't even going to save you a section. So when administration modeled the costs that they did, and they didn't model any savings in instruction, it's because there aren't any. But so you can be disappointed that the number's a little low, but it's not going to save you a teacher. So it's going to save you what he showed you it's going to save you. Possibly a teacher, which is $136,000 approximately, but doesn't include the pension.
Hi, Jason Fong from Wrightstown. Just a couple of quick points tonight regarding next week's big meeting. I've been reading the emails, and I think it's great now that everything's bolded. Like, hey, we're going to be discussing these things, so that's fantastic. But the one thing I'd ask, if the district can do this upcoming week prior to that big meeting, is sending out an email that specifically states that that we're going to be discussing full redistricting, and that we're going to be presenting the results of this modeling exercise that will actually physically show those who are in attendance where these new redistricting lines may in fact go. Because I think that will get more individuals interested and more individuals coming out there. Not just saying some of the things we may be talking about is potential redistricting or closing schools. Specifically state that there will be something presented that people can physically see and understand what truly may be happening. So that's just one request. And then also, I know you guys tabled the discussion of the geotechnical study, and I know you're going to be working on that wetland proposal. I'm assuming this is for construction of Newtown Middle School. So we already are moving forward in that process. You're talking about, had the geotech been approved, that's about $30,000 towards construction of a new middle school. So it's already been approved. I know there's some discussion of, people aren't going to approve anything until we know for sure that there's going to be savings, but you're already moving forward on that process. So I know there's a lot of drama in here, and I know sometimes people like to show that we're not going to be doing X, Y, and Z until we understand what the costs are. I think we need to make sure that the folks in the district understand you're already moving forward in that process, and you do plan to construct a new middle school or spend big money for a new middle school and upgrades. That it's not just about we need to close an elementary school to do that. So that's it. Thank you.
Scott McBurney, Wrightstown. A couple points I'd just like to make, kind of observing the discussions tonight. First one is kind of just the deliberation of what we're doing with the planning of the schools. And I heard a lot of talk tonight about, there's talk specifically with the whole modeling of Wrightstown, closing a school in general. Part of the problem I see with all of this, and after seeing what Jenny's worked on with her 5 and 6 centers, hearing about all the extra space that's at Council Rock North, you can't talk about closing a school or taking trailers offline or doing any of those things until you figure out exactly what space you need, where you need it, and when you need it. To say that you're going to close a school now because you want to save $600,000 a year, would be like saying, I want to go build a 100,000 square foot building without realizing you might need 200,000 square feet. You can't have that discussion now. You need to decide how your district is going to be set up. Are you going to keep it the same, K through 6, 7 through 8, 9 through 12? Are you going to go with middle school 6 through 8? I know you guys already talked, you don't want that. Are you going to put it back to 7 to 9? How are you guys going to do this? And until you guys figure out that component, there can't really be any discussion of closing buildings, closing trailers, any of that. And I think it's just one of those, it's putting the cart before the horse. And my last point that I have is, if we're so worried about safety of kids in a trailer, why are we talking about closing a school first, which is a hard building, which is safer than a trailer? The first discussion that should be made is closing the trailers down, not closing a school down. Thank you.
Good evening, Kevin Campbell, Upper Makefield Township. It's good to see everyone still here. Unfortunately, I've been a little busy in a way, but watching diligently on TV. One of the comments that was just made was about the security of the kids in these trailers. I've had plenty of conversations. If Newtown, Connecticut didn't wake us up to get those trailers immediately off, I don't know what's going to do it in this community. They had a tragedy. Those buildings are vulnerable from a security standpoint, period. If that's the only goal for this board, then let's make it the only goal and get them off and put security and the kids first. It would be a shame for something like that to happen in our community, where we had a chance to do something and it doesn't get done. We have to do something. There are lots of things to do. The hardest thing to do is to make that decision and do it. I've watched meetings back and forth, and there seems to be a lot of turmoil of what we should do or what we shouldn't do. People are elected to lead. Part of being a leader is making the hard decision, positive or negative, how it affects your community. People are going to be able to live with it or not live with it. We have to move forward. This indecision, it's not fair to the community. We need to make decisions. There are decisions that can be made tonight. Mrs. Thomas made them in a meeting the other night. There are things that can be voted on. We're pushing for a meeting to wrap up a lot on the 6th. Maybe only you get 50% of that done. Maybe you don't, but you got to get out of that starting block. If you don't, this is going to go down the proverbial path of kicking it down the street to the next board. To me, as a participant of one of the recommendations, the charge was clear. We had our directions. I only wish that when the new information that came into light about the enrollment, that we weren't reconvened to maybe discuss that in an informal setting. Unfortunately, we weren't. There might have been some discussion that maybe would have came to a different decision that we've heard from the community, maybe not, but that information to me was critical at the end of the day when I saw the presentation. It might have changed what we thought or what school we were going to target to close from my perspective. A 5-year plan is a 5-year plan. I grew up, my father taught me every year, what's your 5-year plan, Kevin? It wasn't the same every year. It grew, it changed, it adapted to the community. This plan has to go on and grow. It can't be set in stone or cement that it's not changeable. We have to make decisions and move on. The next board might come in and change some things down the road. Even if they're unpopular, we all know in our households we make those decisions. We talked about trailers. Newtown Middle, I know of them over time, I'm trying to wrap it up. Newtown Middle School. We're making decisions. Mr. Bialik made a comment 2 meetings ago. We're making decisions on spending money, and we don't even know if we're building this building. It's becoming more and more a reality. We're spending more money. We don't know if we're actually building the building. We need to have a vote on that. We need to make that decision crystal clear with the community. And once we do decide to build new or to renovate based on the different scenarios we've seen from Schrader, we need to figure out what that's going to accommodate. Put that out there and figure out how we're going to set that foundation. Because that new building or renovated building has to be sustainable for many years. And we know what the infrastructure looks like of these buildings. There's a lot that needs to be done. Lastly, the financially responsibility, people have been tossing that around. At all levels, all departments, we should be looking ways to cut costs. They don't have to be drastic, but they need to be minimal. Little things add up over time. What I don't like is when we're spending money and I have to pull out 20 bucks to give my kids, teachers, supplies so they can do their job. I'd rather not do something expensive and give those teachers what they need to do their jobs. But that's not reality. Every now and then we have to spend and we have to pay out of pocket. We need to look at it across the board. Every contract that we have looked at should be looked at and renegotiated. I think someone said a few meetings ago, we're not in desperate times, but we should be looking at what happens if a catastrophic failure or an event takes one of our schools during the summer. If there's a fire, where are the kids going? What's a contingency plan for this district if we have a major incident in this township or in the district? I don't know if we have one. I would hope we have someone somewhere in the files, but that's a real consideration. Does the Newtown Middle School coming forward, is it flexible to be scalable up or down? Or is it going to be built just to hold a certain amount? A lot of questions to answer. There's a big price tag out there, it's floating around. But there's a lot of questions, not just, we'll go ahead and vote it. Yes or no. There's a lot of consideration on that. So, thank you for your time.
Nancy Carroll, Newtown Borough. I just updated my enrollment figures to how many students we lost since 2006, and it's now 1,552, and at the enrollment level, it's 663. And I disagree that a lot of these schools are stressed because at least 6 of them are not stressed. Goodnoe at 773, whose peak was 883, and added 2 classrooms, is not stressed. Newtown at 667 with a peak of 858 is not stressed. Salt Finestone with a peak of 812, now 676, and added 2 classrooms, is not stressed. Maureen Welsh at 629 with a peak of 713 is not stressed. Churchville at 665 with a peak of 709 is not stressed. Holland at 338 with a peak of 594 is not stressed. The schools that are stressed are Rolling Hills, Richborough, Hillcrest, and Wrightstown. And Richborough and Hillcrest only have needs and renovations of about $1.5 million. So that brings you to the other 2 schools that have many more needs. Now, as far as space utilization, Churchville, which has no district special ed, has in the Schrader point a 0.5 classroom for PT and a 0.5 for OT. Rolling Hills, with no district special ed, has 1 full classroom for PT. Salt Finestone, with no district ed, has 1 full classroom for OT. Wrightstown, with no district special has 0.25 for PT. We have 9.25 full-size classrooms for guidance and 8.5 classrooms for counseling. That is more classrooms than Wrightstown has. And about Wrightstown and the cost of the savings. Isn't it true that if you take a 16,000 per student, a student from 16 per 1,000 student school and move them to a school that's 10,000 per student, that you're saving money on those kids? So even though you're creating a smaller school, you'd have to do like what the cost per student goes probably up at the smaller school. You remove all those kids in that smaller school. So I don't know how you evaluate that, but I think that should have some consideration. And I've asked a whole lot of times to please put on the web what the current elementary redistricting sending areas are. I just did a web search. I could not find it. And I don't know if you are going to redistrict, if you have to do, these are going to be the boundaries. Because I think if you are going to vote to redistrict, you could do, these are going to be the boundaries, and then have those meetings, which is what we normally do before we redistrict, is you get a group together, or you hire somebody from outside, or whatever, and you redistrict. And then you go out into the community and say, these are going to be the boundaries, what are your input? So that's just a suggestion. Thank you.
1 second, Jenny Schottmiller from Wrightstown. I just want to say, my daughter was at Wrightstown. She had OT and PT. She's not part of special ed. Sometimes those services are used for kids that are general ed. Thanks.
Steve McGill, Northampton Township, Holland. I was here last week, saw the laundry list of questions. I can't believe that we put, all this stuff on here, and you end up talking about pole barns. Even to bring it up, to me that was a complete diversion to even talk about that. I understand why it got on here. I was here, but the bottom line is this board needs to take leadership in giving direction to the administration. The reason you do modeling, we've got people doing modeling from your community, okay? You've got a $30,000 software system that's designed to do modeling. If you're building an airliner, or you're building a skyscraper, or you're building any major project, why do you do modeling? You do modeling so you can see where the hidden costs and hidden opportunities are and hidden threats. You're not using your modeling the way you should. Redistrict the Council Rock a dozen different ways. And yes, that means the administration is going to have to do a lot of work. But that's a lot cheaper than making a decision about building a middle school or building, closing schools, what you're going to save, what you're going to spend. If you don't do the modeling, you're not going to know. Mr. Abramson said, well, I guess it would be this and I guess it would be that. And somebody else said, well, I would vote this way and I would vote that way on this and that. Okay, you gotta take leadership and put the motions on the floor. Put a stake in the sand and say, I make a motion that we build a middle school for $50 million. I make a motion that we build a middle school for $45 million. I make a motion that we build a middle school for $40 million. Something like that, so that you've got a stake in the sand, because otherwise you have all this discussion going on, and you yourselves have said, the public's confused. Well, why do you think they're confused? Because you're talking in circles. You don't have a focus point. You could make a motion tonight, and I don't understand why it isn't made, to say, I make a motion that the administration plan and execute the closure of all modules for the beginning of the 2015-16 school year. What stops that? Why can't that happen? So use modeling. Use the board motions, use the parliamentary procedure to move things forward. That's what you need to do. That's how you make hard decisions. You put them out there. The motion passes, the motion fails, it's amended, it's tabled, whatever. But at least you know where people stand. And if they abstain, then you have to have some conversations about what it takes to get them on board, or to at least open up and express their opinions and not just sit back in the corner. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I have 1 second?
Yes.
Just as a matter of recognition and for the board and our community's information, I know I briefed the board on this. This week, we lost a student at Council Rock at Newtown Elementary School. Drew Ferrandino was a student in the multidisabilities class, Bonnie Parsons class at Newtown Elementary School. He died on Monday evening, Tuesday. We've had a chance to talk to his mom and dad and to the people at Newtown who have worked so closely with him, and just want to express on behalf of the school district our deepest sympathy and our condolences to the family, and ask that our community would keep Drew and his family in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.